OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Good morning to you. It's Friday morning. It's 7:30. I hope you're well, wherever it is you are. We've a packed show coming your way between now and 10 o'clock. Eoin Sheahan is alongside me. Eoin, how are you getting on?
Not too bad, Adrian. How are things?
Good. I say alongside me. You're obviously still in the wilds of Kerry. How's all down south?
All good. Getting darker progressively every morning. You usually get on at around 7:30 and there'll be just a little bit of brightness, just a little bit of hope that everything is going to be okay for the day ahead. But nothing's going to be okay until about 8 o'clock, I fear, this morning.
Well, if you're Stephen Kenny, nothing's going to be okay for the duration of the day,
Nice
at the very
segue.
least, you would think. It's going to be a tough little time for him, and we don't know exactly what went on. I think that people will be aware of the story at this point. What we might just do at the very top here is just establish what we're dealing with. There's little bits and pieces in the newspaper as well this morning. So I might just establish what we're dealing with this story that sort of started to come online yesterday evening in relation to Stephen Kenny. And this, what's described largely across some of the newspapers this morning, is video nasty. We don't actually know the details of the video just yet, but here's what seems to be true about this. It's 3-minute montage. It contained clips of goals that Ireland have scored against England over the years. You can take your pick of any of the 9 of those. 2 from Jerry Daly, Liam Brady is in there, Ray Houghton, Kevin Sheedy, Niall Quinn, David Kelly, Tony Cascarino and Shane Long have all been on that list at some point or another. It did show up, it seems, some clips of historical context, is how it's been described, of the relationship between Ireland and England in a political sense. And that's the big grey area this morning. What exactly was included in that? Rumour took hold yesterday that it was the movie In the Name of the Father about the Guildford Four, which was obviously a story that had run through the 70s, 80s and 90s. That was then quashed. Martin Brennan had been mentioned, but mainly as a gag, I presume. One source described the video as close to the line. And I guess that's the crux of what the FAI are saying that they're now looking into as a matter of urgency. Some reports saying that some in the room were upset by the overtly political content of it, including players, one member of the coaching staff and a member of the non-playing staff. And we know that we have a diverse squad and we have a diverse staff, and 3 of the squad that night were born in the UK, Cyrus Christie, James Collins and Callum O'Dowda. And it's possible that they were offended, of course, or that one of the Irish-born players indeed were. The new CEO of the FAI, Jonathan Hill, is English, and who knows, and I'm sure more details of that will emerge shortly. We do understand, however, that the CEO was not in the room at the time the video was shown, which wouldn't be to say that he wasn't aware of it at some point soon after. It seems like a selection of goals were shown after that initial 30 seconds of content, and that today has been described as political. Reports that reference the 1916 Rising, the Proclamation of Independence, footage of the 1995 game, and England at Lansdowne Road, where some England fans tore up, of course, seats and caused the game to be abandoned there. So the nub and the rub of all this really is what was in the video. If it was more reeling in the ears than IRA propaganda video, then the FAI would do well and serve Stephen Kenny well today by saying exactly what it was. And if someone was upset, of course you have to allow for that possibility. Isn't the right thing to do, I guess, at that time, to talk to the manager, raise your concerns, talk it out, and perhaps all that's already happened. But you have to ask, really, who it is that has leaked this story to the Mail and why.
Yeah. Getting out in front of this wouldn't be a bad thing to do at all today. And what I mean by that is just maybe giving a few details on what exactly the content was. Like, it may seem like a small deal to some people. I think this is a very, very important part of it. I think the detail is very important. You say there that one source said it was close to the line. There is a line in the Mail piece where it describes it as anti-English. Another person, or another source apparently in the story, describes it as pro-Irish, and like immediately you start thinking about like the grey area that like produces. Like, I mean, Nigel Farage describing Joe Biden as anti-British because he is pro-Irish, and it's like, hold on a minute here, let's actually be clear on what this is. Was this an anti-English video? For sure. Is this exactly what was shown to the Irish players? And I guess it is totally fair if you are a player in that dressing room who has an English background and are offended by what was shown. I think that is a totally fair thing to feel, and we need to have some sort of sympathy for that viewpoint. But we also need to be a little bit cautious about what actually happened here, that this became a story last night. Who had it in for Stephen Kenny that this actually got out there? Because it wasn't necessarily a player who was a person who leaked this, essentially. Like, I think when it comes to the content of the video, it's very important on that front. Like it is, however, also important to establish whether or not Stephen Kenny made a political speech and what he said in that speech. That's also part of the content as well, because apparently he was warned by a member of staff not to do this, not to actually proceed with this. And whether or not the member of staff was the person who also went to the media about this, we're not quite sure. So it's going to be a very interesting couple of days, because you also have the board level FAI represented in this story as well. One executive apparently unhappy about this. You would have to ask the question, was this executive, this board member, also involved in FAI dealings when Ireland wore a 1916 commemorative shirt? If they were, there was immediate hypocrisy there. Like, was it as bad as wearing a 1916 commemorative shirt? Because according to Aidan Fitzmaurice's story this morning, the crushing of the 1916 Rising is one element of what was shown, and also an image showing 1916 on the big screen in Wembley was another part of the imagery used. So if you're unhappy about this, and if you're leaking stories about this, but also we're happy to go ahead with a 1916 commemorative shirt, I think that's hypocrisy, personally. But I think if you're one of the English-born players, even if you're not one of the English-born players, it doesn't matter what your background is, you have a right to be offended. That being said, what the English media might actually try and produce over the next couple of days is going to be interesting as well, because let's not forget, there was a huge furore over Alex Morgan pretending to drink tea a couple of years ago. That is the sort of thing, last year in fact, that is the sort of thing that they could perhaps describe it as anti-English. What level was this on? There are layers to this, and as you put it yourself, it could be reeling in the ears. It could be worse. I'm not for one second excusing it if it is worse than that, but the content is key.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the nub of what we're dealing with here, and there's so much chat out there about exactly what it might be. Do you know, on the top level of it, I had sort of also assumed, even if it's just that sort of showing the stuff of like the photographs of, as you say, the crushing of the Rising or whatever it might have been, I sort of assumed that stuff had worked itself out of like Irish sport at some point, like regardless of how tame or otherwise was, or how just much of a statement of fact almost that it was. I sort of assumed that kind of thing had worked itself out of Irish sport, that we weren't any longer looking to rile ourselves up about playing the old enemy.
It does seem a little bit cheap, all right. It doesn't really seem either that if you were of a mind to be anti-English, I hate using that phrase anti-English, but if you are close to that line, you probably don't need to be shown these sorts of videos to go out and actually put your best foot forward against England. The motivation should already exist. Trying to create it artificially might actually be a little bit cringeworthy in some corners. I'm also concerned about that narrative, though, about the narrative about how, if this is like amateurish from the management team to be showing this, because I don't know, this is a story now because it was leaked because somebody was unhappy with the political content of it. And if this wasn't leaked, we wouldn't have any idea whether or not amateur hour was going on in the Irish camp or not. So I'd have a little bit of sympathy for Stephen Kenny on that front. It just seems it's just another remarkable step in what's already been a very, very turbulent start to his Ireland career as a senior manager at this point. And like the lines like fighting for his job and things like that this morning don't look like great lines whatsoever, and the investigation will be interesting. Like you're right in terms of perhaps us being gone beyond that point of needing to motivate players via republicanism. I think we also probably need to be a little bit conscious of who might be in the dressing room. Like, I mean, there could be people from all different sorts of backgrounds in the dressing room, as pro-English as you like, for example, and maybe it is a little bit of an unwise move to show that sort of content. Either way, though, I still think that distracts from the fact that somebody sharpened a knife for Stephen Kenny in the last few hours, and that doesn't bode well for what happens next for Stephen Kenny.
Nice mo, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. It's not really that nice, but sure, look, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm going with the handlebar here myself. It's taken sort of different shapes depending on what humour I'm in at any given day. But we're all, obviously, you can jump on Movember.com/Gillette. And there's a bunch of us who are trying to grow a bit of facial hair. In 43 years, Owen, it's the first time that I've ever, I was going to say sort of felt the desire to grow any facial hair, but that is really not true. It's more of a press ganging, as you'll be very well aware of from colleagues. So there are, I don't know if you find this, but certainly sporadic urges to just get the razor out and shave the whole thing off.
Wow, you've come close to the edge then. This is You're in the red zone. This is the wall. You got to power through. You're almost there. What are we through November? 20 days. You've got the hard work done at this stage.
Broken the back off it. It's these bits here particularly that are really annoying. It's like, I actually think that I could live with a moustache. It's just, maybe I should just shave them off. I suppose would be one solution to it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, absolutely go for it and let the entire country down. But be our guest, Adrian. We'll keep up the good fight on your behalf.
Right, we have so much coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. You are watching OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. As I said, we've plenty coming up field with Louise Galvin in just a couple of moments' time. Louise is going to tell us, look ahead to the provincial finals this weekend. And I suppose in the overall sense, let us know exactly what she thinks in terms of whether those how those games are going to be tied or not. So we'll see about that, and we'll get Louise's thoughts on all of that. We're also going to have our prediction picks for the weekend. Will O'Callaghan is still out in front there. Tommy Rooney will cast his vote in absentia. Whether that's going to be allowed to stand come Monday, we shall see. We might have to send that through the courts, but we'll see on that. The United Nations versus England is how Eddie Jones has called it. We will ask Alan Quinlan a bit later on what sort of hope he holds out for Ireland in the autumn internationals, the autumn cup. That will be coming up a little bit later on. Why always me, asks Messi, and as well as that, Pep's new deal, his meeting with Jose this weekend, and Manchester United as well, all in the company of Andy Mitten from United. We stand a little bit later in the day. Phil Egan's must watch, might watch, won't watch is coming your way. Colm Boohig is going to talk about the ATB finals and let us know if that's something in an already fairly stacked weekend of sport that you should be keeping an eye on or not. And that'll be coming your way a little bit later on. We'll tell you what's happening across the back pages as well. So that's all coming up over the course of today. Do keep your comments coming into us if you have any thoughts about the Stephen Kenny situation and exactly what might unfold there, or indeed anything else that's happening over the weekend. Do get your thoughts into us this morning. But it is coming up at 7:45 on this Friday morning, and a very good morning to you if you've just joined us. And Phil Egan, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian. Morning, Eoin. How are you doing?
All good, yeah. This Stephen Kenny story is bubbling along.
Yeah, this is obviously the story on the back pages, and we kind of thought we were done with international football after we spoke about it yesterday and the events at the Aviva the other night against Bulgaria. But the FAI now plans to examine that video that was shown to the Ireland squad before last week's friendly against England. Stephen Kenny's players were shown a short 3-minute video before the game at Wembley last week. What we're told is it mainly contains footage of previous meetings between Ireland and England, and there's around 30 seconds then of historical content. The Daily Mail, who reported the story yesterday, described its contents as anti-English. The FAI released a statement last night to say they're looking into the video as a matter of urgency. There is some action tonight on the pitch. 2 more quarter-finals in the Extra.ie FAI Cup. First up at 5:30, it's Finn Harps against League champions Shamrock Rovers in Ballybuffet. That's followed by Bohemians and Dundalk at Dalymount Park. That game kicks off at 7:45. Now, speaking of Ireland and England, obviously they meet at Twickenham tomorrow in the Autumn Nations Cup. They'll have the captain's run this afternoon, and obviously a first time for James Ryan to lead a captain's run. And ahead of that game, England head coach Eddie Jones has turned up the heat, as Eddie Jones tends to do, referring to the Ireland squad as the United Nations. So that's certainly makes things a bit more interesting going into that one. Shane Lowry's 3 under par after the first round of the RSM Classic in Georgia. Graham McDowell also well placed on 2 under. Matt Wallace and Camilo Villegas share the lead on 6 under. Rafa Nadal remains in with a chance of securing a first ever ATP Finals tennis title. He's into the semi-finals in London. He knocked out defending champion Stefanos Tsitsipas in 3 sets last night. This afternoon, Novak Djokovic will attempt to secure a spot in the semi-finals by beating Alexander Zverev. And Ronnie O'Sullivan certainly has the wind in his sails as he advanced to the quarterfinals of the Northern Ireland Open. He had a 4-2 win over Tepchaya Unnu in Milton Keynes, but the world champion admitted in his first match of the day against Matthew Stevens that he let one rip. O'Sullivan, obviously nicknamed the Rocket, says that he's had stomach problems for a couple of months and he just couldn't help himself. So that's where I'll leave that one there for you, lads.
Jesus, like, he farted and he had stomach problems for a couple of months, which resulted in him farting. And I thought, but what?
Yeah. The Rocket, yeah. That's why it's not why he's called the Rocket, but just as well he wasn't playing Judd Trump, eh?
It's a good part of the context. Phil, listen, you've been working on that for a while. Good man, enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. We'll chat to you a little bit later on. Phil Egan there on the line, as always, with the very latest in the world of live sports, 7:45 on this Friday morning. Starting to brighten up. Hopefully that's the case wherever it is that you are, and hopefully brightens into a nice, it's been a bit of a wet morning, hopefully it brightens into a nice day and into the weekend. But that's enough of the weather. But we've GA to talk, and I'm delighted to say that Louise Galvin, former Kerry footballer, joins us on the line. Morning to you, Louise.
Morning, how are you?
Good, thanks. What a weekend of football we have ahead. Now, having said all that, between the Munster final, the Ulster final and the Leinster final, I'm not sure how tight any of them are going to be. Which one of them are you expecting to be closest?
If I had to pick an upset, I think it'll be the Munster final. Just hearing the news there that Sean Powter might be out for Cork, so I think he's going to be a huge loss. And just I think there's a few elements of that game that could make it a bit tighter compared to the Ulster and the Leinster final.
Yeah, like it's you've both teams coming into it on the basis of having a bit of heroics, obviously last day out, and you can make the case that maybe Cork were lucky in the end against Kerry, but I mean they obviously had contrived that opportunity and get it done. But it is the sort of thing that, like, I think that when you weigh up the pieces of each team, then on paper certainly it looks like Cork should get it done.
Yeah, on paper I think it does look like that, but just a few little things like Cork, I said before on off the ball before the Cork Kerry game, like huge motivation for them would have been, I think, Kenry knocking Kerry out of the championship, particularly in, when it is straight knockout. So they need to obviously park that now. They would have been on a huge high after that game. You need to be able to come down off that, resettle, regather everything and refocus again towards Tipperary. And even with the hurlers not being knocked out last weekend, like Cork footballers don't get a lot of attention at home in their own county. I'm sure in the last week or two they would have been getting a lot more. I know if a lot of that talk was still looking back at Kerry instead of looking forward towards Tip, you know, maybe their mindset isn't exactly in the 100% perfect place. Now I know Ronan McCarthy is a shrewd manager. He would have been absolutely trying to prepare them mentally as well as physically, but they really needed to come down off that high from that last gasp winner against Kerry and be focused. Right now Tip, I'm sure, lick of their lips. I think another added element, and it's something I didn't think wouldn't have been as big until I watched the documentary there. It was a Sunday night and Monday night, was the Bloody Sunday effect on the Tip team. And I mean, they haven't won a Munster final since 1935. They've lost, I think, 7 finals. Imagine for those players the motivation that, and the centenary year and wearing those commemorative jerseys. What a way to honour their team and to honour Michael Hogan than to win a Munster final for the first time since 1935. Now, I know it all comes down to all the players on the field playing, but sometimes it's those little nuggets, those little extra pieces of motivation that if Cork aren't fully on the ball, if they aren't as committed, fighting as hard, that Tip, if they stay in the game, well, it could be Tip having a bit of daylight robbery at the end of it all. And look, they know they can get the beating of Cork. Obviously, their fortunes in Division 3 are a bit differently this year, but one of Tip's best performances in the league was actually playing against Cork. They beat them in 2018 down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the league. They beat them in Championship as recent as 2016. If they're stuck in it, coming out of that last water break, listen, I wouldn't write them off.
Yeah, and like I think, go on, yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say that this is one of the more underrated storylines or potential storylines of 2020. This Tip storyline, like you mentioned it yourself there, they've beaten them in 2016. They're operating or have been operating at a similar level in the National League. Like very rarely do you have a real opportunity for whatever it is, a drought since 1935 to end in this fashion at the weekend. Like usually a drought since 1935 takes a hell of a lot of fortune or misfortune for people. There's a real chance for Tip to go out and win this, and I feel that sometimes this has been lost over the last couple of weeks. There was a real opportunity for history.
Yeah, I think an interesting thing as well, Eoin, was David Power. One comment he had is that, you know, Tipcombe, they've, I think we all know they've excellent footballers within their squad, but he says they tend to play at the level of the opposition, which is a very interesting comment for a manager, but that also means he's no fear of them stepping up to that intensity or that level that Cork will be looking to bring at Munster final day. It also means they've just absolutely no fear of playing them. And I just worry a little bit, like before the Cork-Kerry game, I thought the fact that Cork had a few of their 20s in who are used to winning, used to beating Kerry, they have that kind of almost naive confidence, which obviously worked out for them, that's a positive thing. But now on the other side of it, do they have that maturity and that experience to come down off that win and completely almost shelve it, park it, also learn from their mistakes? Because look, that wasn't a brilliant performance. It was absolutely incredibly dogged. They showed incredible fight spirit and no little skill as well to rescue it in normal time and obviously in extra time. But it wasn't a brilliant performance. So are they looking back on the mistakes to actually go out and put in a big performance? And I mean, they should be looking to win and put up a really good performance against Tip and actually push on and maybe win by 6 or 8 points, because maybe on paper they believe they're that much of a better team, but they can easily be dragged into a dogfight here if they're not mentally 100% in the right place and if Tip have that extra little bit of motivation.
Yeah, and they're both on the right side of the draw, obviously, as well. Tipperary, up to this point, Offaly, Leitrim, Clare, Limerick, all accounted for, and like none of them are teams that you're going to be having in relation to a conversation about even All-Ireland semi-final, really. But obviously a lot of momentum with them, and the manager knows how to deal with derailing bigger opponents as well. And like you said, obviously in relation to the commemorative jersey and the day that's in it, like there are a lot of little factors here that actually suddenly, when you start to look a bit deeper into it, might suggest that that kind of upset could be on the card. So we'll see how that goes. Are you ultimately, when you say that that's the one you think there might be an upset in, are you thinking that will happen?
I don't think so. I think, listen, if Cork, after beating Kerry, go out and lose to Tip, they'll be absolutely kicking themselves. I think Ronan McCarthy is a very shrewd manager, and enough of their players are there long enough, the likes of Ian Maguire, to, see the pitfalls and basically hopefully not let this happen from their point of view. But I definitely think coming out of that water break, if there's 2 or 3 points in it, a lot of those Cork players who are hunting down Kerry players in the semi-final, if now they're the ones being hunted, well, we see how they react to that. If Tip can really bring that fight and that extra little bit of edge to the game, I think it'll go right down to the wire. Again, weather could have a huge impact on it. It's going to be a messy day down in Porky. We've seen how that can make everything a bit of a lottery as well.
Yeah.
I think the hurling as well is on there on Saturday. So look, the pitch has been looking really good, but again, if it has a tough hurling game the day before, mightn't be as well able to handle if there's a big downpour on the day on Sunday. So there's just a lot of aspects, and it's just 2020.
Anything could happen. Yeah, I definitely started out this conversation thinking that Cork were going to not quite walk it, but you mentioned 6 or 8 points. And I've had my cough softened a little bit, I have to say, over this conversation, and there might even be a shake for Tip in that. Donegal, Cavan as well, Louise. So obviously Cavan have had to dig it out against Monaghan and Down. A couple of big scalps, obviously, to have had under their belt. And they're playing a lot of football. Is that the right approach also against Donegal, do you think, or may they need to tweak the game plan?
Yeah, I actually think I worry a little bit for Cavan going into this game, because they've had a tough run in for the last 5 weeks. Like their last 2 games in the National League against Roscommon and Kildare, they were fighting relegation, so they wouldn't have been taking the foot off the pedal. Then obviously coming back against Monaghan, extra time, next week out against Antrim, next week out against Down, pulling it back. Like, talking about the emotional energy that Cork would have had to expend. Cavan, yeah, they're on a bit of a roll, but they've had to, like, physiologically expend a lot of energy over the last 5 or 6 weeks, and now they're coming up against one of the fittest teams, a team you just find it very difficult to outrun and outwork. I actually think this could be a bigger gap than people expect. Obviously, they played in their first Ulster final in a long time last year against Donegal, and I think the scoreline flattered Cavan really in the end. I think it was a lot closer than the game really suggested. So they'll have that extra bit of added experience, bonus. And I know Mickey Graham said that even the fact that there isn't flags up all over the place, there isn't a big hype because, again, due to COVID, everything is much quieter and dampened down, that he thinks that'll help his squad. But I think against Down the last day, there's a bit of heavy legs there, and you don't want to go into an Ulster final against Donegal, who are just seem to be singing all off the same hymn sheet, carrying heavy legs, knowing you've had 5 tough enough games back to back in the previous 5 weeks. So I actually think I worry for Cavan a little bit here. They certainly can't let Donegal get the run on them that they let Monaghan and Down, because they're gonna take the foot off the pedal. They're not going to let them back into it. Even if Cavan hadn't done that against Monaghan and Down, I think Donegal would have been too smart and too cute and just too strong defensively as a unit to let them back into the game. So they really need to come out all guns blazing, not let Donegal get that run on them, but at the same time, Are they going to have it in the legs and the tank in the last 20-25 minutes against this team? I just can't see it happening.
How do you wrestle control away from Donegal in these games, Louise? Because they seem to have everything, and it starts from an unbelievable goalkeeper who's got a ridiculous boot, and whether he's into the Gale or with the Gale at his back, he is dangerous from those positions. It is akin to coming up against an Ulster version of Stephen Cluxton here. Is there a way around this if you have a player group like Cavan, which don't have the star talent that Donegal do?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Sean Patton, obviously. Of course, Raymond Galligan had his own heroics against Monaghan as well, in goals for them. But look, they look so strong, and they look to be able to play dirty, play clean. Like we see against Tyrone and Ballybuffet in a horrible, dirty day. They ground out that win, and they've the likes of Oisin Gallen coming off the bench, kicking superb scores. Then, you know, but whether a bit better against Armagh, they can just play a super brand of football. They're just so fluid at attacking forward from the back, and they've such a strong defensive unit. It's going to be quite difficult, Owen. I think Cavan last year in the Ulster final, they more or less sat back a little bit and tried to keep it. I think they wanted like a 10 points to 8 kind of a scoreline at the end of the game. They can't do that this year. So listen, I think with 2020, any manager, especially who's coming up against any sort of underdog situation, just go and attack, just go and play. Same for Meath against Dublin. I don't think you can just hope that you can eke out a tight battle at 10 points to 8. So whether, you know, Raymond Galligan and his backs and his midfield, they have to look at a kind of a short kick-out strategy to try and win ball, but then you're leaving that Donegal defence set up. Look, they have some big men in there in Gerald McKiernan. Why not put them into maybe the edge of the square and try and bombard early and high and go for goals a la Meath? Because I certainly don't think if they just try and play toe-to-toe with Donegal, I don't think they're going to win. So maybe a little bit of coming out with that same intensity and ferocity that they did in the second half against Down and the second half against Monaghan, and hoping they can get their noses ahead. And then that sheer, I suppose, adrenaline keeps them in it in the second half when they're probably going to be hanging out of their last legs again. And just hope that Donegal have one of those days that things aren't going too well for them and they're actually behind coming into that third quarter. So maybe if I was Mickey Graham, putting some big men at the edge of the square, and I know it sounds very kind of Route 1, almost archaic, but look, we're talking about November football. Putting high ball into the square there, we've seen Mayo doing it, Aidan Shea, mightn't be the worst strategy in the world. And someone like Gerald McKiernan, I think he's a big footballer, but he's a very good, skillful footballer as well. Maybe starting the likes of Conor Madden, who's been very impressive off the bench, to buzz around him as well, to pick off a few scores. And then you don't know what kind of a game you're going to be in, but I think that could be a good strategy for Cavan. I don't know, what do you think, Colm?
Yeah, like I think it's also where they got their penalty from last week as well, from just a little, not a hidden hope ball, it was a free kick that went awry, wasn't it? And it was still a high ball on top of the down square. I know it shouldn't have stood because the Cavan players stood out of play, but it just showed a little bit of chaos that can come from it. And I mean, if it is that sort of game where it's low scoring, it could be the sort of thing that wins you a game. I'm with you though on the thing that this could be
Alan Markeen.
Alan Markeen, well, exactly. This could be a bit of a big win as well for Donegal. I think people possibly forget last year's Ulster final, and it seems that Donegal have got better since then as well, that they are perfectly suited to these conditions almost, that if this is in the middle of the summer, you'd give Cavan a better chance almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like, look at them up that Ballybuffet game against Tyrone. They were so impressive. And fair play to Declan Bonner as well, because I mean, we all looked at the start and the league games, and we wanted to see form, and he got his win against Tyrone, and then he sent whatever a bit of a second team or rested a lot of players that trip down to Tralee, which we now know meant absolutely nothing for Kerry in the end, or didn't help them out. And you know, he had his big guns rested, ready to go against Tyrone, and they've just seemed very almost professional and slick, and that they're ready to play whatever conditions, whatever team comes up against them. That they have a lot of clarity. They still have a lot of skill as well, and a lot of impact off the bench. Like I mentioned, the likes of Oisin Gallen coming on, and even Paddy McBearty. I mean, to think you've that left peg, and you might even be starting him is just shows their strength and depth as well at the moment. Bringing on the depth of new players every year. Like last year, Jamie Brennan was so impressive. This year, Paddy Mogan was super in that semi-final. So I just can't see Cavan toppling them this weekend. But maybe a bit of Route 1 on a dirty day might be the way to do it.
Yeah, trying to play that Donegal through that Donegal team might not be the smartest thing. We've had a comment in from Kevin Cronin on YouTube, Louise, saying that he thinks that Meath may be able to pull off a shock, which a shock probably represents a loss by anything less than about 12 or 14 points. And just before we wrap, what do you think of the margin of victory here? I presume is the conversation.
Yeah, look, obviously Meath are coming into it with a confidence. I'd scored 5-8 out of that, 5-9 against Kildare was from play, which is very impressive. But a lot of those goals came. The source was a sloppy turnover from Kildare, and they just won't get that from Dublin. They have a lot of young players, the likes of Jordan Morris. It's great to find new players coming in every year. They had a good enough year. I know they got relegated from Division 1, but Andy McAtee seems to be doing good stuff with them. But again, I think we're looking at probably an 8 to 10 point swing might be a good result for them. It's just impossible to see this Dublin juggernaut slowing down. Talk about absolutely consummate professionals. They just don't care who they're playing against. They have their targets, they have their KPIs almost, and they're looking to hit them off regardless of the opposition. So I think if Meath could stay within 8 points, it would be a good enough result for them. I'm sorry to any Meath fans out there, and I'd be absolutely delighted if they could pull off the shock, but it'll be shock of the century, I'm afraid. Having said that, I don't see Dublin being unbeaten for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Someone's going to do it, and it could be a day where Dublin are off kilter. You have a team coming in high in confidence, which is Meath. So who knows? We'll all do the lotto if they win it.
Well, it is, as you said earlier, it is 2020, so who knows? But I think we can all expect Dublin win. Louise, thanks a million.
No problem. Thanks, lads.
Thanks a lot, former Kerry footballer. Right, lots still to come. We'll be back in a moment with the back pages and Alan Quinlan's thoughts about Ireland's trip to Twickenham.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
Ferguson has a knack for seeing maverick and, kind of creative genius and sort of letting it flow.
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists. The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. Bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Plus, put your feet up and cheer your bets home with free live streaming on every UK and Irish horse race. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest sporting events right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Yeah, it's just gone 8 o'clock and time for the back pages.
OTB AM.
Kick things off here with with OTBSports.com for you and a bit of a flavour of what's happening up there. John Giles, thoughts from last night's football show in the company of Nathan Murphy and plenty more besides as well if you navigate around there. OTBSports.com. The Irish Times, Jones up to his usual tricks ahead of Ireland contest, writes Jerry Thornley, a picture of himself and Andy Farrell shaking hands before, I presume, the most recent Six Nations game there as well across the top. And Gavin Cummins says, build-up would be all the poorer without England coach whispering sweet nothings. That's the back page of the Irish Times this morning. And the Irish Daily Star, Kenny's video nasty, and this very much a theme that covers a lot of the back pages today. FAI investigates claims of inflammatory footage. DVD referenced years of suffering by Irish people. That's the back page of the Irish Star. Elsewhere, Kenny in dock, says the Irish Daily Mail this morning. That's Philip Quinn, their manager, under scrutiny over political video. There's an interview inside the Mail today. Jurgen Klopp has plenty to get off his chest in this exclusive interview, they say, with Jamie Redknapp, Liverpool manager, on the ridiculous schedule, horror injuries and 5 subs, as well as the title race, and Jones wary of Ireland's United Nations threat, writes James Murray there. In the Guardian this morning, it's there is unfinished business. Guardiola signs City extension but pledges exit if fire fades, he says there. The Irish Independent today, anxious Kenny plays waiting game. Some senior players uncertain over international futures, but Randolph poised to stay on. Slightly different angle there, and some quotes from Stephen Kenny before yesterday's furore kicked off, and Jones, sorry for homegrown players, I'm sure he is squeezed out by Ireland's United Nations, as he describes it. And the Irish Examiner today, how could complacency be an issue for the Rebels? Writes Patrick Kelly here ahead of the Munster football final this weekend. The thoughts as well of Michael Quirk, who's obviously been up close in with Dublin over the last couple of weeks. Kenny under fire is the back page splash of the Herald today. Aidan Fitzmaurice here. Ireland boss hopeful that keeper Randolph will stay on. Again, that same line there. And Colin Moran, I can't see an upset by Meath. Right, Frank Roach here. I think we're with you there, Collie. The Times London edition today has a lot of Irish flavour on the back of this. Jones jibe at the Ireland team, writes Alex Lowe there, and Matt Lawton has that story. Kenny video anti-English is what it says there from the chief sports correspondent. Guardiola staying on until 2023. The other story there, that's also the story at the back page of the Telegraph, as also Jones attacks Irish imports. England head coach targets Farrell's United Nations team. Referee urged to keep close eye on unusual scrummaging. That's probably the most interesting thing, actually, when you chip away at that. Those Eddie Jones comments from yesterday. The Mirror Kenny probed is how they reflect on Stephen Kenny's the FAI launch probe into motivational speech over after it's branded overtly political. And the back page of the morning, it has to be said, goes to the Irish Sun this morning. They've gone all Sex Pistols on us. They've got Ronnie Rotten up top here in relation to that story that Phil was telling us about earlier, and Ronnie farting in his match yesterday. That's from Rob Maul. They've got Vid Vicious. Did you get it, Vid Vicious? FAI says they'll investigate Kenny's England film as a matter of urgency. But was this really a Vid Vicious? That's Neil O'Riordan there. And Never Mind the Bollocks is the one that completes the trio from Johnny Fordman here. And this is, it just seems like a statement that's sent Eddie Jones' direction. So that's the back pages for you on this Friday morning. It's 8:07. Do keep your comments coming into us. We've plenty more to come for you over the course of the morning, and we want to hear from you as well. So, all of that coming up over the next little while. We've Alan Quinlan, I think, standing by. Quinny, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian. How are you?
Good, thanks, yeah. Interesting reading a lot of the back pages this morning of that story that developed up yesterday about Stephen Kenny that I think got us all a little bit by surprise. And we were just saying, myself and Owen, a bit earlier on, that we kind of thought that this sort of stuff was a thing of the past, where you would use that Ireland versus England thing as a motivation. Was it a thing in your time?
I'm not sure we had any videos and stuff, but certainly if we recorded and things that were said in dressing rooms and the build up to matches, they wouldn't be so pleasant. I think it's a load of bloody rubbish, if you ask me. And I'd have more of a problem with the person who has come out and spoken about it and letting FAI officials know about it than the actual video or any sort of motivational speech that Stephen Kenny gave. I think it's very disloyal. It should have been handled indoors if there was an issue with it. If somebody had an issue with it, I know it was flagged to Stephen Kenny beforehand. He decided to play the video and give the speech, but for the FAI now to be investigating
like the thing is, Quinny, so that all of that could have happened. So somebody might have had an issue with it, and they might have spoken to the manager about it at the time, and that might not be the person who's then obviously leaked the video. That's the nub of it, I suppose, and we'll find out maybe a bit more over the next little while. What sort of thing would you use, and give us a bit of insight as to what shape that would have taken?
What kind of language would it have used in dressing rooms? No, I couldn't share that stuff. But we watched a video of when we played Saracens in 2000 over in Vicarage Road, that Kilkenny played us a video of the Lion King. So that's a little bit different than playing stuff from the 1916 Rising. I think watching the Lion King and stuff. But it's not common, I think. Obviously showing the history of games and looking back at big wins and stuff like that would be very prominent with any team, saying, well, look, this is how we beat them. This is how things work. These are some great sporting moments, and that would have been common enough. But nothing to that level. But again, I think it's a load of rubbish. I think it's, for someone to take offence to this, I find it hard to accept that. I think it's unnecessary pressure being put on Stephen Kenny for it to come out now and be leaked out to the papers is strange. And like I said, if a staff member had an issue with it and continue to have an issue with it, well, it's got to be dealt with internally. You know, it's all over the headlines and all the papers and online and everywhere. So I'd have more of an issue with the person who leaked this, and hopefully we'll find out who that was.
Is it fair to say that perhaps there would have been less of an opportunity or less of a reason to show this in a rugby dressing room, in an Ireland rugby dressing room? I guess it's an all-Ireland sport. This perhaps was really tapping into the Republic of Ireland football team to look at it from their perspective.
Not really, Owen. I think, like, even with the guys up north and playing for Ireland, you know, and all the history of the troubles up north and all that kind of stuff, you still wouldn't be conscious of being politically correct in things you say in a dressing room or say in a meeting or whatever. Look, if you're playing for a team and coach produces video or content, or some people say that, well, you know, this is adult sport. They're paid professionals. I'm not saying you can't take offense, but things get said before matches, things get said in the build-up, and for me, it's a bit strange that people are taking offence to it and saying it's political. There's nothing political about this. It's a bloody match. It's a soccer match. Stephen Kenny made a decision to play a video to try and give the players a lift, to try and G them up a little bit. And I've seen a lot of stuff online last night where, well, if you're not motivated to play against England, of course, you shouldn't be there. But, you know, if Ireland went out and had a great performance against a much stronger England side and got a better result, well then, you know, would people be saying the video was a great idea? Look, it's a decision Stephen Kenny made, and I just feel sorry for him now that he's to carry the can of this, and this is going to be kind of looming, and there's an investigation. He's got to go and talk to the FAI. But again, it's a storm in a teacup for me.
Did you run through walls, and did your performance go off the charts after watching The Lion King before that Saracens game?
It was comical, I think, but there was obviously a few key important messages in it, and I won't say it, we were banging off the walls, but we had to kind of chat amongst ourselves and understand what the reasoning was for behind it. But no, there was some good messages in it, and you know, whatever you do before a game should be amongst the group, amongst the staff, and for this stuff to come out is just stupidity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just have a mental image of Peter Stringer being hoisted aloft after the game. That you know, that's how that should have gone. He's in the role of Simba, of course. Let's talk about the game this weekend, Quinny. So Eddie Jones has been out. Like, it's all about what coaches and managers are saying these days, but he's been out yesterday talking about Ireland's United Nations team. So it's hinting at obviously trying to get under the skin of Ireland, the fact that there's 5 project players there. But when you dig a bit deeper on it, he is like, maybe there is something there in terms of the inexperience of that team. And like, when you look at the spread of caps, Quinny, 433 in total for that Irish team versus 725 for England, and that matters, doesn't it? That level of experience.
Yeah, it does. And what matters, Adrian, is the last 3 results against England. I think we've struggled physically against them. And look, he's always stirring it up, Eddie Jones. Is he really concerned about Irish players not getting picked over players who've come here and qualified through residency? Not in the slightest is he concerned about them. Was he concerned about, Ben Spencer or Danny Kerr last year when he selected Willie Hines, a New Zealand-born player who qualified through residency, and he picked him on the England World Cup squad? You know, was he bothered or worried about Danny Kerr or Ben Spencer? Does he have an issue with that? Not in the slightest. Is he bothered about Maka Vunipola or Billy Vunipola? One was born in New Zealand, the other in Australia. He played Brad Shields a couple of years ago. In fairness to him, the New Zealander, he's an English parent. He captained Nathan Hughes, who was born in New Zealand, wanted to play for New Zealand and Fiji. Manu Tulangi is a Samoan. Joe Thakanasinga is a Fijian. So he's picked loads of players himself, and it kind of suits him to come out and say this. He's entirely only stirring the pot. He's done that before.
I heard somebody calling them. I heard somebody calling them United Nations, mate. which was like he overheard somebody on the tube or something. I don't know. It seems like a bit mad.
Yeah,
when
well,
we get in,
he's in Australia and in England, isn't he? So you know what I mean. It's a lot of the stuff is contradictory. He called us the scummy Irish a few years ago, and that's kind of related to the Stephen Kenny video. You know, he did this lunch, scummy Irish. Then he said Wales is a shithole. You know, these things get said. I wouldn't pay a lot of heed to it, but I would go back to him and say, look, well, you picked Willie Hines last year. Were you worried about Danny Kerr, who started playing rugby at England when he was 5? It is an issue for sure. We have 8 players in the 23 who weren't born in Ireland. So thankfully that has changed. I know there's the very much divided opinion. Lots of people don't think it's the right thing to do. You know, Jamison Gibson Park is starting ahead of Conor Murray. How does he feel? Andrew Conway is not in the match 23. James Lowe is playing instead of him. So there's plenty of examples there of people who should feel aggrieved, the players. But the residency rule has changed to 5 years, and that's the way it is. We probably won't see too many of these project players anymore.
When we dig into the meat of the game, like you look at that English back row, Quinny, Curry, Underhill, Vunipola, it's a powerful unit up against Stander, O'Mahony, Doris. On paper, which is the better back row? How do you see that battle going?
Well, they've the better back row. I'm doing player ratings for the game tomorrow, and you know I've gone through both sides for the paper, for the Irish Independent, and I've gone through both sides. And their back row, look, is the real strength. And even the pack, when you just kind of start naming out their forwards, you're thinking this is a daunting task, and they've kind of found a template in the last couple of years to unsettle Ireland and stop them from playing and physically outmuscle them. And historically, England have always had a very big, powerful forward pack. That's always been the challenge when you play the English national team, and it's going to be a big challenge tomorrow. So, you know, Curry and Underhill are, you know, probably the world's best at poaching the ball and attacking people's breakdown. There's a lot more to the game too. They're very physical, and they're excellent ball carriers as well. And you know, you couple that with Vunipola, can be devastating, and any losses England have had in the last number of years, particularly success we've had, he's probably been missing for England when we've played him. So it's always going to be a challenge when you play England physically. And that's going to be no different tomorrow. I think Ireland have got to find a way to trying to hold on to the possession and hold on to the ball, because I think England's game plan is power, but it's also pressure, trying to force the opposition into mistakes with the pressure they put on the opposition. And we've kind of buckled under that pressure in the last couple of times we played them, made silly mistakes and errors. You go back to the game in Twickenham, you know, missed tackles, people not covering open space, England being on the front foot a lot and us being sloppy with the ball. So I think Ireland, if they've any chance tomorrow, they've got to be really effective and hold on to the ball and play intelligently in where they play the game, because the pressure you get off Curry, Underhill and Itoje as well, particularly around the breakdown, and when they're defending against you, they just force so many mistakes. So there certainly need to be a calmness and a control there. And then, you know, if you get to half time and you've had a good first half performance and you can take a little bit of confidence from that, well then, you know, maybe it's game on and Ireland can grow in a bit of confidence. But if England start this game in similar fashion in the last few, well, it could be a tough day out for Ireland again.
You mentioned being calm and composed there, Alan. Is there an element, though, as well that Ireland need to find a bit of that manic aggression besides that as well? Because earlier in the year, one person who found that was, in fairness, James Ryan, who is captaining the side. And for him to show that again, I'm sure we can all expect him to do that very same thing again.
Yeah, well, it's a big opportunity. And obviously, you know, there was calls for him to be captain after the World Cup. This is... You know, there's a fair bit. Obviously, there's no crowds there tomorrow, but there's the perception after this. If Ireland get a good performance or even a win, which is unlikely, you know, you can imagine how that would elevate some of the players and even James Ryan's candidacy for being captain going forward. On the flip side, if it's a bad result and a bad performance, well, then there'll be lots of questions asked. So, look, he's a wonderful player and he has natural leadership qualities. mainly in how he plays. You know, he's not that vocal, and he's not someone who I think who wants to be, you know, going to press conferences all the time and dealing with all the other stuff. But I think he's growing, he's getting more mature, he's a superb player. And with so many of the other players on, if they get a good performance tomorrow, even if it's a loss, I think that the key for Ireland is to come out of Twickenham tomorrow not being bullied. And you know, they need, of course, if you're successful in these games and do well and win them, or you're thereabouts, you have to bring a physicality and an intensity. And we've lacked that the last few times, because England have set the standard right at the start of the game by smashing an Irish player, by, you know, turning them over, getting a big moment. And I think Ireland have to try and create those big moments tomorrow. There'll be lots of endeavour, and there'll be a real determination for Ireland to go and try and get a performance and start well and do these things right. It doesn't always happen, but, you know, attitude, they won't need to be played any videos for tomorrow. I think, you know, they've individually and personally, they've got to bring a real attitude with them tomorrow. And look, they're hurting from the last number of losses. And, you know, I don't want to be chatting to you guys on Monday morning talking about, well, we were beaten up again and we were slow out of the blocks and we were soft in the tackle. It can be very difficult, because England have the ability to smash anyone physically. So that's going to be a real test, but bringing intensity and a real fire to match that will certainly help.
Yeah. All right, Quinlan, we'll let you away. Thanks, million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
I think Quinlan on the line there. As always on a Friday, ahead of a fairly monster game for Ireland, for this Irish team as well. See how they go, and exactly what sort of tactics that very experienced English 15 will approach the Irish team. We've plenty coming up, by the way. We've Andy Mitten, who's going to join us in a little bit to discuss all things football. Messi's disgruntlement at why always me, I suppose, the top line of it at Barcelona. Pep versus Jose this weekend. Pep signing a new deal. Manchester United, plenty to get into with Andy Mitten a bit later on. Colm Boohig will be along as well to tell you why you need to watch the ATP Tour finals this weekend. You'd hope he'd be pretty convincing. That is all coming up a little bit later on. And also, we're going to get our GA predictions for the weekend. Will is going to join us on the line, and Tommy Rooney in absentia is going to get his own votes in. So all of that to come 22 minutes past 8 on this Friday morning. We have a very special podcast featuring Brian O'Driscoll and Nicky Byrne that will be coming out tomorrow. It's a really good conversation where Brian interviews Nicky, and that's all coming your way. And it's all in association with Vodafone. And also, we've put them through their paces in this very, very special quiz. And we'll be back after this with Andy Mitten and plenty more. Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me. September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know.
Welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It is the scintillating, it is the stupefying, it is the splendido crappy quiz. We do, of course, have Brian O'Driscoll and Nicky Byrne with us today, and they will be tested on how much they know one another. Nicky knows not to mention the name Tana Umaga anywhere near Brian O'Driscoll, and Brian's been desperately trying to avoid the name Brian McFadden for the last 40-50 minutes. But how much do they truly know about one another? Well, let's get into the first of 3 rounds. Round number 1, gentlemen, is the sporting careers round. Question 1 for you, Brian. Nicky could have been a top-class Premier League goalkeeper if it wasn't for George Graham and Paul Robinson. But can you tell me which of the following League of Ireland clubs Nicky did not play for? Sligo Rovers, A. B. Cove Ramblers, or C. Shelburne?
Sligo.
Oh, correct straight away. Didn't even need to repeat it twice. This guy's done it.
I mentioned it about 5 minutes ago. That's the only reason.
Listen, I know you. I'm a super fan.
Of course, IOU did play at the Showgrounds, but this was pre-Westlife, so you wouldn't have been a member of it there. It's all available on YouTube for anybody who wants to check it out. 1997, I think, was the Showgrounds performance. Question 1 for you, Nicky. Brian O'Driscoll didn't do badly when he eventually found his feet as an Ireland centre, but while at UCD, he was moved from which position into midfield? Was it A, fullback, B, winger, or C, out half? A little bit more hesitation this time. Fullback, winger, or out half?
The truth is I don't know, because that's a difficult question. But I imagine Brian to be quite fast. He was quite fast in his day. So would he have been a good winger? I think so. He's also good. He's a strong lad, strong as an ox. I'm going to go with a winger.
No, I'm afraid not. It was an out half.
I was thinking Simon Egan. Was he a winger?
Yeah, he was. Good knowledge. 94, yeah. In Twickenham, yeah. I'll take it. Do you know, I played a bit of wing in school, but that's not the question. Out half was the answer.
I can only go with what's written down in front of me. Was that flattering, Brian, hearing that description of your rugby prowess there? Strong as an ox, fast?
Yeah, no, I'll take that. Yeah. I've heard worse things said about me.
If I remember being on a night out with Brian many years ago, he has a dodgy bicep. Have you still got the dodgy bicep?
I do. Yeah. It's still. I can't tell you how obsessed my kids are with this. They're like, "What? Get the arm out! Get the arm out!" I told them initially that I got hit by a golf ball and it lodged itself in there. Like, seriously? I was like, yeah. No, it's like you can actually fit a golf ball in there.
I've never seen this bicep.
Have you seen his dodgy bicep?
No.
Listen,
no.
If 2020 needs anything, it needs to see Brian O'Driscoll's dodgy bicep.
I can see the screen grab coming.
Let's put it like this. If Nicky ends up winning this quiz, then the forfeit is to show the world your dodgy bicep. Is that not fair enough?
No problem. That's the confidence levels that I have.
Well, you are 1-0 up. We go into round two. Round two is the North Side Dublin round. It is Baldoyle against Clontarf in this round. Who knows the North Side of Dublin better? Well, let's find out. Question 2 for you, Brian.
Okay.
Dublin Airport, Brian, is nestled proudly in the north side of Dublin and was the start of many a successful away trip for you and your teammates. But can you give me the number of any Dublin bus route that serves the airport?
When was the last time you were on a bus?
I've looked for an autograph outside your tour bus a few times. I presume it works this. Will we say
as in the buses that go there come out of
the 13?
The 13 is not the correct answer. Nicky, any idea?
I'm going to go with 41.
41, man of the people, Nicky Byrne. He knows the crack. 41.
He lives out there. Sure, I would never see anything going up the Holt Road. I'm over further. I'm coast.
It's a good point. You would always need to get a taxi. In fairness, it's 16, 41, 747 or 757.
Yeah, and listen, it is a good point, but that wasn't the question, bro.
I usually said that there's going to be no crossover of answers here, but look, you can pick up a point there. It is 1-1. And Brian, if Nicky gets this one wrong, you can also jump in to take the point. So at 1 point apiece, question 2 for you, Nicky. Croke Park is nestled snugly in the north side of Dublin, and both of you, of course, have made happy memories inside the gates there. But Nicky, which postal district is Croke Park located in? So Dublin what?
I'm going to go... Well, Dublin, it's north side, so it's obviously an odd number. Dublin city centre is Dublin 1. Clontarf and Drumcondra there, is it Dublin 3?
Correct. It is Dublin 3.
Oh, it's not. Croke Park.
It is Dublin 3. It is Dublin 3, yeah. Google Croke Park postcode. It is Dublin 3.
See, can I tell you a little secret though here?
3, because Clontarf's 3. I don't know if it extends to Croker. You don't sound overly confident, Owen.
No, I'm very defensive.
You got very defensive very quickly there.
You sound like Roy Keane in that quiz thing we're talking about now.
No, it is Dublin 3. I just googled it earlier. I was surprised to see that it is in the same postcode as Clontarf. I would have thought they would be different, but no. Jones's Road, Dublin 3 is the address of Croke Park.
Can I interject? Georgina's mom, Miriam, grew up in Jones's Road, Dublin 3. So we've been there many, many times. And obviously Bertie's constituency, because he's from Drumcondra as well. So if I didn't get that right, I think I would have been kicked out of the family now, in fairness.
Okay.
It's a good point. The bicep is getting closer and closer to the screens of the public. But
dodgy bicep.
But enough of all the messing. It is time for the most serious round of the day. Round 3 is the 2014 RSVP magazine Ireland's Sexiest Man list round. That's right. Both of our contestants today featured in the 2014 RSVP magazine Ireland's Sexiest Man list. I'm not saying this is when these two gentlemen peaked. I'm just reporting the facts of the day here. Here is a couple of questions actually for both of you. So an opportunity to score 2 points in the final round. Question 3 for you, Brian. Nicky was one of 2 members of Westlife who appeared in this list. Can you name the other member of the band who featured? And for a bonus point, can you tell me if he finished higher or lower than Nicky in the results?
You just got to pick your favourite here, Brian.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go with Shane. It's got to be Shane. And do you know what? I somehow know that you finished second in the pecking order, so I don't know whether he won it or not. I'm gonna say that Shane did win it in 2014, and he was the most handsome in the whole group.
No, you're wrong on both counts.
Oh, no.
You're wrong on both counts.
Dodgy bicep. Dodgy.
Cian Egan was the man who finished in this list, and he finished lower than Nicky. I know the line you're talking about. In Nicky's Wikipedia, it says he finished second in this list. That is untrue. Never trust Wikipedia. The actual list has Nicky finishing 4th, behind Ronan Keating, who finished 3rd, Niall Horan, who finished 1st, and in 2nd place was Jedward. 2014, Jedward were Ireland's sexiest men with the exception of Niall Horan. I think
unlucky, just outside the medals, unlucky.
All blonde lads with quiffs there, lads. You got Niall, me, Ronan, and Jedward.
Question 3 for you, Nicky.
A lot of hairspray in that.
Brian was one of 3 Irish rugby players who appeared on this list. Can you name any of the other Irish rugby players who featured? And again, a bonus point if you can tell me if they finished higher or lower than Brian in the results.
In same year, 2014.
2014.
So what year did you retire, Brian?
14.
I would say, I always that year, that era. I always refer to the Irish rugby team as the Celtic the Celtic Tiger rugby team, because you know you had Gordon Darcy, you had Stringer, you had Jamie Heaslip, who else? Ronan O'Gara. I would say Donica as well was in there. So what was the question? Who else was in the top 10?
Yeah. Just in the list in total, I think there was 21 names in total in the list. There were 3 rugby players. Brian was one of them. Just give me one of the other names and whether or not that person finished higher or lower than Brian.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 names. I'm going to go with Rog and Donica.
You can't pick 2 names. You can pick 1 name because there's a chance you're 50% right there. And then
Is he right? Is he right?
Pick 1 person.
I'll see you out there. I'll see you.
Pick 1 person. You've only been asked to pick 1. Pick 1.
In the whole list, I'm going to go with Donica.
Higher or lower?
I know, Brian was higher.
You're wrong on both counts. It doesn't matter.
This one can be transferred.
Go for it.
Tommy Bowe.
Correct. I'm not going to give you the bonus point, though. We'll go to a tie break. You have tied it up at 2 apiece.
That's just because you want to see the bicep. That's not... What?
I didn't get a chance to answer about Keegan.
I'm not going to lie. It's Tommy Bowe. He finished higher. Rob Carney was also on the list. He finished higher. Rob finished 8th. Tommy finished 12th. Brian finished 18th. Don't worry, you did finish ahead of Brendan O'Connor and Michael O'Leary on the list. So, especially all round.
They had a that year.
They had a bad year.
To the tie break. And I'm going to need an answer from Nicky first here. And then, Brian, you can give me an answer. It is a specific number. Whoever gives me the number closest to the answer will win. So, Nicky, the question is this. And take your time here. It is a simple addition question. The number of Lions caps Brian O'Driscoll has earned in his career, plus the number of UK number 1 singles Westlife have clocked up. Add those 2 numbers together, what do you get?
Okay, so just before I continue, I'm allowed to say this out loud. You're not going to ask if you know
I'll even... Okay, I've got mine.
Perfect. If you want to shout out a number there, so Nicky.
Okay. So how many number of Westlife number 1s, and then added to how many Lions caps he has in his career?
Exactly.
Can I ask you, Brian, how many lines?
No, you can't. Continue. What's that?
How many lines tours you did? 2, 3?
Yeah. Somewhere around that.
So we know the board. You did 4 tours.
Yeah.
Oh.
West Side 4.
Okay. And how many games in a tour?
It's test matches. So there's 3 test series in each of them. So there's a combination of that would be 12.
12 in total.
Yeah.
Okay, but you got one where you got absolutely minced.
But I started it.
I know, but you only played 1 game. I think your shoulder is still over there, is it? Right. So that gives you. So that takes you to 8 potential, and I would have imagined you played in every one of them. So. Right. Maximum. Oh, you played in that one and that. So. Maximum you could have played was 23 added with my number ones. So I'm adding the number ones in here as well, right?
Yeah. Please.
So Westlife had 14 number ones. So
and how many Lions caps?
So I reckon if you had 12, let's say you played them all, 14 and 12 will be 36, but you missed 3 games.
14 and 12 is 36.
Sorry, 26. I wasn't in that day. 26. Right, so that means take away 3. You could have only, as I said at the start, you could have only possibly played 23. So
your final answer is?
I'm going to take away, maybe you didn't play in a game or 2. So 21.
21. Brian?
I'm sick.
Brian's gone for 20. The answer is 22. So Nicky wins.
Oh, gee, what's that?
Yeah, 8 lines capped.
Can I just show you through the? Can I show you through the jumper? Is that okay?
As Victor, Nicky, is that okay?
Listen, whatever you want to do, Brian. I would never want to put you in it. What else do you want to? Do you want to go to the gym for half an hour just to get?
I'll hang on. One sec.
Here we go. Look.
Here we go. Oh, I see it.
No, not yet. That's nothing, Owen. That's nothing. Wait till you see this baby.
How the hell does that
There we go. Not enough. There's enough for people to see, and hopefully people didn't get their cameras ready. And
a proud day for Baldoyle all around. A proud day for biceps. I guess Clontarf, a district with a cloud of shame hanging over today. But I think you brought it back with the bicep.
I'm going to look at Croke Park Postal District there.
Go for it. You will certainly see it's Dublin 3. Brian, Nicky, thanks a million. Nicky, congratulations. You were the Cracky Quiz champion.
Congratulations. Well done. Well deserved.
And as a matter of interest, Brian, and you don't have to put this in, but can that be repaired?
Yeah, it can be repaired. Yeah, but there's no point. There's full functionality with it. So it's quite a big operation to have a repair. Like, you're gone for a good few months. Actually, it happened about 6 weeks after I came back from my shoulder reconstruction on the same side. And I was like, I can't believe it. I've done it again. So I just couldn't feel that arm. It wouldn't pick itself up. I was like, oh no, not another one.
And how did you do that?
I don't know, I just grabbed some and it just snapped. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. But actually, there's a guy that played for Ireland in the 90s called Paul Burke. He's quite a small little slight guy, but he has both of them torn. Like full Popeye quality. So Doris has one done as well. So yeah, when we used to go out for a few drinks, it used to be the call for the biceps out.
Who else? Come on, name and share. Who else has a dodgy bicep in Irish?
I actually don't know. I don't know. That's my limit. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the better ones to have. Jeez, you know.
Of course.
Yeah. You know, rather that than a ripped scrotum.
Do they have to reattach the muscle? Is that how it's done?
The tendon.
Tendon.
Biceps tendon. It's your tendon that snaps. So that it's that. Yeah, they have to reattach that. If it's the lower one, mine's the higher one. If it's the lower one, I think you have to have surgery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and what do you think of it?
that blew me away. I thought like that was incredible. that is insane. How does that even happen? That like half of it works and the other half just doesn't. Like I would have thought that it all just stops working, you know. It's an absolute medical feat.
It's like getting on a motorbike with one wheel. It's like, yeah, just.
Thanks a million to Nicky Byrne. Thanks a million to Brian O'Driscoll. Congratulations to Nicky. Thank you to Brian. Thank you for the bicep. Join us next time for the Crappy Quiz.
There you have it. That was Eoin in conversation with Brian O'Driscoll and Nicky Byrne. I mean, it was probably the last thing you expected of your Friday morning, but I think you'll agree that it was absolute gold. And as we mentioned just before that started, it'll be part of a wider conversation where Brian interviews Nicky, and that'll be coming your way over the next few days. Right, it's 20 to 9 on this Friday morning. Andy Mitten of United We Stand joins us on the line. Good morning to Andy.
Good morning.
Plenty to get to you about, but one of them we wanted to kick off with was Lionel Messi. He's back in the headlines today, or the last couple of days. The former agent of Antoine Griezmann has had a few things to say about him and his reign of terror, as he's put it, at Barcelona. And Messi himself has responded to say that he's tired of always being the problem for everything at the club. What's going on here?
A lot has gone on, especially this year. And traditionally, Lionel Messi has said nothing publicly. But this year, he's become more emboldened and he started talking about how he feels, and it's usually negatively, using his favourite communication tool of Instagram. And there's been 4, 5, 6 different instances where he's come out and been very critical of the club, and it showed a broken relationship with Jose Maria Bartomeu, the president of Barcelona, who was likely to leave at the start of next year, but actually stepped down a few months ago. He was very angry at the way Luis Suarez, his best friend, and his wife and Suarez's wife are really close. They have a shop together in Barcelona. And he was angry at the way Suarez was treated, in so much as he's Barcelona's third all-time goal scorer. And he received a 60-second phone call from Ronald Koeman to say, "You're no longer required, you're not in my plans." That's it, bang. And he left, and that angered Messi. They're close neighbours, they're really close friends. And then Barca have had to make major economic cutbacks. So they let players like Suarez, even Rakitic, Rafinha, Arturo Vidal, I think the combined total for all 4 of them was 10 million euros, but it was more about getting them off the books because they had pressing financial issues even before COVID kicked in. And Barca were quite boastful about being the first club to reach $1 million in revenue. And I'd spoke to certain people at Man United, for example, and they just raised their eyebrows. And I'm on about the top people. And I know that there were doubts about how Barca's money situation was. So Messi was also playing in a team which was declining, and he's a winner. And I've just written this piece. I've written 5,000 words in this for the cover of the new 442 magazine about this. And Messi was really upset after the 8-2 defeat to Bayern Munich. Of course you would be. And that's when he decided to leave Barcelona. And he thought he was exercising a clause in his contract to leave for free. He got it wrong. He left it too late. The club were actually right and wouldn't let him leave. But when he decided to stay, I was really struck by the reaction from some fans, but from people in the club, that he'd stayed. And one person said to me at quite a high level, and they were all talking to me off the record, it's really sensitive. I'm gutted he stayed. I love him as a player. I love what he's done for this club, but I love my family more, and there's going to be more cutbacks. So Bartomeu told a chairman of a club a couple of years ago, my entire job is getting enough money to pay Lionel Messi. And he's been the boy who's cried wolf several times, and that usually results in him getting a massive, massive new contract, and then it quietens down for a couple of years. He continues to be probably the best player in the world. And he's still, I would say, the best player in La Liga. He's the best passer in the world still. His game has changed. But this year, lots of things have come to the head. He felt that the club were pressuring the players to take a wage cut when the players were absolutely happy to do that and have done it twice. But they felt it should come from them. It was their money. It was their contracts. They shouldn't be pressured into doing it. And then Messi had issues. A lot of the players did with Setien, who replaced Ernesto Valverde. Valverde was very popular with Barcelona's players, and they didn't like it when he was sacked. And I thought it was ridiculous that they sacked him. I don't care what people on social media said. It was ridiculous. He was top of the league. He'd won the league twice. And yes, they got hammered by Liverpool and by Roma, and they were appalling results. But I still think he was a great manager and he was a good person. And Setien didn't work out. And Ronald Koeman came in, and he's been charged with basically bringing young players through. It was an aging team. You had lads like Messi, Piqué, Rakitic, Vidal, Jordi Alba, way north of 30 years old. And you were seeing a decline, and you've continued to see it. Look at the league table now. Look at Barca, the way they were overhauled by Real Madrid. They failed to win their 9th title in 12 years. That's how dominant they've been. So it's been a really troubled year at Camp Nou. The stadium reconfiguration still not started. It was supposed to start 3 years ago. No president really wants to do that on his watch because it'll mean a massive stripping back and lack of investment in players. The Neymar money was spent really badly, and none of the players wanted Neymar to go. They all wanted him to come back. They weren't impressed when Antoine Griezmann did a video saying that he wouldn't be joining Barcelona. And then a year later he came. The players wanted Neymar to come back, and Griezmann hasn't fitted into the dressing room as well as other players. So you've got all these reasons building up, and it bubbles along, and it becomes a headline all the time.
It seems like it's slightly ludicrous. I'll talk to you about Pep in a second, and maybe these stories are intertwined somewhere along the track. And it does seem like a slightly ludicrous thing to say when you look at it for pure footballing reasons. But at the same time, maybe the best thing for all parties is that he leaves. Is that what you now expect to happen soon, or is he gonna still play out the rest of his days at Barcelona?
Yeah, I would expect that to happen, but I also expected that to happen in August. And then I know his family is very settled here. The kids go to school where they're taught in English. He's been here all the time. He lives in like an Argentinian bubble, so he still speaks with a very strong Argentinian accent. He doesn't speak Catalan. And his father is less of an influence. His father's been back to Argentina, especially since the tax charges of a few years ago. So Messi's become more confident, become more interesting. That doesn't really come across in interviews. I always made the parallel with Wayne Rooney. When I interviewed Rooney at 18, it was terrible. But now he's a really interesting man, and his thoughts are well worth listening to. Messi hasn't really developed in the same way. But then I think that's a very deliberate thing. He lets his football do the talking. That's his strongest attribute. In the same way that the model Kate Moss doesn't speak because her strongest attribute is her looks, Messi just lets the football do the talking, and it has done the talking. He's been incredible. But I remember him asking me about Manchester City in 2010. It was at the end of an interview, and he asked me where the money was coming from, how much they were paying. And I'm thinking, well, why don't you just ask Carlos Tevez, your international teammate? So he does like money, and a lot of people around him do. And maybe he's entitled to that because he's so good. He's a game changer. He's won all these trophies. Incredible. He's won over 100 individual awards. I think a little bit of him likes the idea of playing in a different league. The relationship with Guardiola is good. Wasn't always good. I was sat there 5 meters from Guardiola on the day he stepped down, and somebody who knew Guardiola very well just said, "Don't look at him for your story. Look at them," and pointed to several of the leading players. Messi, interestingly, was the only one who was absent that day. So there's been tension, but that's pretty normal between players and managers. I've heard Man United players privately say Ferguson was this and that, but they respect him for being brilliant. And it just keeps coming to a head. Messi started training well this season. He does like the younger players around him because they do the running for him. I think footballistically, he's pretty comfortable. He's a winner. Someone who knows him very well just said to me, he just wants to win. He wants to win trophies. And this is probably the weakest Barca team, or a team which needs a major rebuild for a while. Europe has not been, Barca have been well short in Europe the last couple of years. So you've got all these reasons sort of building into the same pot. And I speak to Barca socios, and some of them are just convinced they've mapped out his career for him. Manchester City, then he'll go to New York, who are part of the Manchester City group. And you can see the logic in that, but I don't have any hard evidence of that. Of course, there's loads of Catalans at Manchester City in executive positions. And you've got Gillette, you've got Guardiola. So you can see how it all adds up there. And he's still a brilliant player. Barca need money. And they'll probably get money now for Messi rather than in 2 years when he's 35.
Is it a guarantee that he succeeds at Manchester City and succeeds in the company of Pep Guardiola once again?
I don't think you can guarantee anything in sport, but I still think he's the best player in the world. And that's a subjective view, but I watch him a lot. And maybe I won't be saying that in a year's time. You've seen Cristiano Ronaldo diminish slightly. His passing is incredible. He's an absolute joy to watch. You know, I've never hid my allegiances. I totally do not want him to go and play for Manchester City, but you can see why, because he's a game changer. And I think Premier League fans would love to see Lionel Messi there. Realistically, it's the only league where there's the money for him to go to. He could go to PSG, but they're hamstrung by financial fair play restrictions. It surprised me when I did all my research how good the relationship was with Neymar, how much they wanted Neymar back, how many Barca fans pining for that forward line of 5 years ago when they won the treble of Suarez, Neymar and Messi. Griezmann has underwhelmed. He's a great player. Dembele, another 100 million plus player. He's been too inconsistent. Philippe Coutinho was fantastic at Liverpool. He's underwhelmed and was allowed to go on loan to Bayern Munich. So that Neymar money was spent pretty badly.
Is there a guarantee, or not a guarantee, but like I guess from a Manchester United perspective, a fear that Pep Guardiola is going to end up peaking twice in his Manchester City career? Because this is the question that's been raised in the aftermath of yesterday, a brand new contract. There have been legitimate questions asked this season of Pep Guardiola as a manager and if he's losing it a little bit. So what are your fear levels at from a Manchester United perspective of that actually turning out to be true?
I don't really have any. United have got enough problems on their own plate to deal with before worried about Manchester City. And United's record against City is actually very good. Beat them 3 times this year. It's a freak. I've always respected Guardiola. I thought he was a wonderful player, brilliant footballer, and then manager. And I watched him come right through from the 3rd division with Barca's B team, and as a thinker and as a person. And I would have loved to see him become Manchester United manager. I really would have done over the years. A year ago, I would have probably said that he would leave Manchester City. And that's just from speaking to people I know in Catalonia. And that would be people who say things to me like, oh, I went for lunch with his wife last week. I'm like, oh, do you know I'm a journalist? You know, but just being entrusted with information and not really needing to write it. And he has signed his contract, and I know he's pretty happy in Manchester. He's got control at City. He's got a really good working relationship with Byrne, with Soriano, another Catalan. They've got power there. They don't have the financial pressures that they have at Barcelona, nor the politics or political intrigue. They've not got a president because of the way the club's structured at City. They've not got these continuing shifting power plates that you have at Barca. It's an extremely political club. And I used to think that Barca's model of fan ownership was brilliant. This was the solution. We don't want the Glazers or Hicks and Gillette. Let fans own the club. And then I see Barca and it's a disaster. It's a disaster. But their fans might say, yeah, it might be a disaster. You might think we're all crazy, but we still win the title all the time. So there's two sides to it. I don't think Pep's finished in the same way that I don't think Jose Mourinho's finished. And would I be surprised if he built another great City side? Not really. I can see that they're having major wobbles at the moment, but so are most other clubs, including United. You know, Liverpool have not been as imperious as they were last year. Look at the top of La Liga table, Real Sociedad and Villarreal. It's not Barcelona and Madrid. So you've seen it in major leagues. Messi would be a major asset. I think that Barca will be asking for your 100 millions. And I'm not convinced that there's value there because I don't know how long he's going to play for. Don't know whether he's going to be, if you're going to get a Ryan Giggs and he's going to play until he's 40, then great. But I couldn't answer that.
Just on Pep, and obviously in the context tomorrow as well, with the 2-year deal, and it sounds like from what you're saying, I mean, maybe the easiest thing for him was to walk away, and maybe he did flirt with that, but alas, he's at City for another 2 years, and they meet Jose obviously tomorrow, once friends, bitter rivals, great history, maybe the keenest, most bitter and most interesting rivalry in football at the minute. It's still a hatred, I'm assuming.
I'd only have to make an assumption as well. I think there's a respect, if I'm honest. That rivalry in 2011, wow. I was going to those games, those cup finals in Valencia between Barca and Real Madrid, and it was so tense. It became too tense. It became violence was in the air, and it was absolutely fascinating, but it was horrible as well, because you could see them both snapping, and on one level, Jose was just winding Pep up so much, but shouldn't have been poking people in the eye. It got really, really nasty, and Barca was still a better team. Madrid, they won the cup in the 11 in that game in Valencia, but Barca was still the better team. They absolutely demolished Manchester United in the Champions League final that year. But there's a short managerial fuse at Barca. It's so intense, and Pep lasted 4 years and he had to walk away from it. That's a huge amount of time for a Barca manager, because it is so engaging and the media is so intense. There's press conferences all the time, and it's a major rivalry. I'm sure when they're both 70, they'll meet up and have a lovely meal and have a chat and respect each other deeply in the way that Ferguson and Arsene Wenger probably do. But they were the top of the trade, and now they're working in England, and I'm sure they'd absolutely love to beat each other at the weekend, and I don't blame them. That's what drives them. That's what's made them the greats that they've become.
Yeah, it'll be all eyes on the touchline, I think, as much as anything else tomorrow when the two of them go head to head. Fascinating rivalry. It feels like Pep sort of just doesn't feel that Jose is a football man almost at the core of it at times. He's sort of maybe let that veneer slip in some of his press conferences over the years, but which is from the outside looking in itself a fairly fascinating viewpoint.
It is. I think it's unfair. He wasn't a football player. He's never worn the shorts, as Sergio Ramos always said. But come on, I mean, Jose came into Pep's Barcelona team when he was a player among great, great players. Luis Enrique, Rivaldo, managed by Louis van Gaal. And he came in as a translator, but very quickly, this was under Bobby Robson. You'd see Bobby Robson struggling with his Spanish and saying, okay, we're going to Real Sociedad tomorrow, and we intend it to be a tough game and to attack them, and we hope for a win. And the translation would come back through Jose Mourinho. It was like, we've seen their counter-pressing and the way they use their channels, and it was so much more detailed than what the manager had just said, that within weeks, Mourinho was taken off that position. I've spoke to Barca players from that team, and they never saw him becoming a top manager, but he was utterly driven. And he became a top manager. And I know a couple of players who, pretty well, people like Benny McCarthy, who played under him, and they just say he's the best manager he's ever played for by a long, long way. His man management skills, there's a side to him you don't see in the media. He has got tactical acumen. He's a serial winner. He got the job at Old Trafford because he was the closest thing you can get to being a guarantor of success. The only man United thought could go head-to-head with Guardiola. He wasn't a wonderful midfielder like Guardiola, but Arsene Wenger wasn't a great player. Some of the greatest managers ever have not been great footballers. Ferguson was a top player, but he wasn't a world-class player. And Jose doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He has been one of the best three managers in the last decade and beyond, and so was Guardiola.
Mm-hmm. Long may they continue to have a pop at each other, obviously. Just before we let you away, Andy, some conversations with Duncan Castle was writing this week about a story that an unnamed United player at one point had a whiff that he expected Solskjaer to have been sacked a number of weeks back, and at the time that this unnamed player thought that was a good idea. And obviously they rumble on and they have a few injury worries ahead of West Brom at the weekend, but it seems like a constant talking point that just won't go away in terms of Solskjaer's future at the club.
Club have got no intention whatsoever of sacking Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and there's a media, and I'm part of that media, and I have editors calling me and say, can you write us a piece from Istanbul after last night's defeat? And I see the headline and it's, is this Ole's last game tomorrow? And that's just the way that headlines work. Journalists don't write them. And look, if he loses tomorrow, the pressure kicks back in again. It's Manchester United. They can't be where they are in the league. The home form's terrible. But there's still a feeling that he's making progress. There's been setbacks, some of them pretty bad. There's been great moments, some of them incredible. And there'll be more setbacks. But I speak to people at that club every single day. And if I felt the sacking was imminent, I would be writing that and I would be talking about it. And I just don't. And look, if United lose the next 6 games, then the position becomes untenable. But there'll always be some players who are unhappy, players who aren't getting picked. But I don't hear any major dissent against Ole like I did against Jose. And situation can change. Of course it can. Moods change totally. The mood among United fans swings wildly. It lurches with these results because the team is so inconsistent, and that's got to be sorted out. But then they're going to lose more matches. Don't think the team are going to come close to winning the league this year. But as long as there seems to be a general improvement, I think they did really well to get to 3rd last year. A cup win would do him a lot of good, but people will judge more harshly because Ole will have been in the job 2 years next year. And he spent a lot of money and he still thinks that he needs to bring more players in. Fine, but don't look at the league table if you're him and you're 15th or whatever and expect people to have sympathy with you. I'd expect that to change, if I'm honest, because this pre-season preparation was poor. The United had other factors, and other clubs did as well. But I'd expect it to start changing. But that home form has been a major black mark. United haven't won any of the last 6 home matches in the league at Old Trafford. That's terrible. Probably would be different with fans there, but no club's got fans there. And that West Brom game, I sort of thought a few weeks ago, United will go and beat Everton because Ole needs a result and he gets results when he needs them. And I first said that on this show a year ago. And you won't be surprised if they lose 1-0 at home to West Brom. But if that happened, it would really kick off.
Yeah, we'll keep a keen eye on it. Andy, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Andy Mitten on the line there from United We Stand. And he said you can check out that full cover story with Lionel Messi as well on the cover of 442 in the coming days. We're going to be plenty more still to come. We're back after this. We've tennis, we've Premier League and GAA still to come here on OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 3 minutes past 9 of this Friday morning, and after this quick break, you can keep an eye out here for Claire Egan, who runs the OTB Super Value Scoreboard Jungle Gauntlet. There's more to come as the championship narrows and all, but thanks to Super Value, proud partner of the GAA All-Ireland Football Championships. You can see youtube.com/Super Value Ireland for more.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Sunday paper review on OTB.
And it got me thinking, I think, about a lot of the arguments that are made, Joe, around the social value of sport. And I think you'll see a theme, and many of the listeners will see a theme in the newspapers today about why, on the one hand, sport should be given an exemption because the social value and all of the things it brings. And this is what Eamon Sweeney is saying. But we need a bit of humility here, I think.
Digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Okay, so you're welcome along to the latest edition of Scoreboard Jungle. This is our GAA quiz, which we're running right across this inter-county season. Very happy to say we have with us 4-time All-Ireland winner with Mayo, Claire Egan. Claire, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Joe, for having me. Feeling a bit nervous, but anyways, we'll give it a go.
There is the pressure. There is the public pressure. So round 1 is take your points and the goals will come. 5 questions, 30 seconds, 1 point per correct answer. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Claire Egan, your time starts now. Tell us, Mayo's All-Ireland winning captain in 99.
Diana Hora.
How many All-Ireland club titles have Carnachan won?
6.
Who was named 2019 Ladies Footballer of the Year in 2019?
Sinead Ahern.
Who was the last Connacht county to win the All-Ireland Ladies in football?
Galway.
Who won the 1998 All-Ireland Ladies football final?
Waterford.
Very good, very good, very good. So Diana Hora was correct. 6 titles for Carnachan was correct. Siobhan McGrath last year was Player of the Year. Galway in 04 was correct. Waterford was correct in 98. That is 4 out of 5. Very tidy start. We have round 2. This is the going for goal round. So this is sudden death, effectively. 3 points per correct answer. And if you get one wrong, we stop you. So your 30 seconds starts now. So which Cork club did Dublin's Noel Healy win an All-Ireland club title with back in 2019?
Moran Abbey.
Correct. How many All-Ireland Senior Football Championships have Kerry won in the women's game?
11.
Oh, correct. Well done. Name the Dublin player who scored 2 goals in the women's All-Ireland football final in 2017.
Sinead Ahern.
Unlucky. Sarah McCaffrey.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah
That's
McCaffrey.
right. Okay.
That does mean, though, you got 6 in that round. You got 4 in the first round. You are level with Dr. Colm. Top of the table.
Fantastic.
Very nice place to be. 10 points. Claire Egan.
Thanks
Nicely
very
done.
much.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursa shoot, Duggan! Oh, what a goal for Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what do you do? You get a slap?
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports, ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
All right, it is 7 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM with myself and Eoin Sheahan, and Colm Boohig, I believe, joins us on the line now. Morning to you, Colm.
Adrian Barry, your handlebars looking very well.
Thanks very much. You've just got a constant sort of growth going on there, looking cool growth. Come here, listen, we want to talk tennis with you and the ATP Tour finals. And like with the biggest question that I have for you on this one is, with so much actual sport happening over the course of the weekend, why would one tune to the ATP Tour finals?
That's a good question, Adrian. But this is if you like tennis or even a casual fan of tennis, this is the highest level of tennis in its most consumable form. So you have the 8 best men's players in the world playing in 2 groups of 4. It's a round robin. If you lose a match, you can still go through, like Rafa Nadal has done, like Dominic Thiem has done. And in Thiem and Nadal, we have 2 of the 3 best players in the world by far at the moment into the semi-finals this weekend. Also, this weekend, with so much sport happening, you're going to want that Hollywood factor, to the box office drive and factor to get you in. And that's the fact that Nadal is into the semi-finals for the first time in 5 years. And Nadal has never won the ATP finals, despite playing it for 16 years in a row, I think. So there's a lot going on with that.
Sixth time in the semi-finals and never won it. That's bizarre.
6th time in the semi-finals, never won it. You see, usually what happens with Nadal is he's absolutely knackered by this time of year. But 2020 is obviously exceptional. And for 5 months of 2020, there was no tennis played at all. And unlike, say, the Premier League in football, it's very difficult to catch up in tennis, because if you miss an event, it's kind of gone, really. Now, the French Open did reschedule, but for instance, Wimbledon just cancelled. And a lot of events, even if you just look up like the ATP events for the year, they're just cancelled. There's no postponement, they're gone. So the players are kind of playing with what they have left. And that's why you have Nadal, who's slightly fresher. I mean, Nadal won Roland Garros, of course, last month. We talked about it on OTB AM. He's played 1 event since then. That was the Paris Masters, where he lost in the semi-final to Alexander Zverev. So he's pretty fresh, counting all things in and all factors in. So it's probably the fittest he's been at these finals in a long time. And so therefore you would think that he has the best chance of doing it. But with Dominic Thiem, he was a beaten finalist last year. He won the US Open this year. He actually beat Nadal earlier this week in 2 tie breaks. It was a fantastic match, and it really could have gone either way. But with Thiem, when he's on form like he was against Nadal, there's nobody that can beat him. And the best thing as well about these ATP finals is that it's best of 3 sets. So it's over like that. Like, you could have a match that finishes inside an hour, or it could go 2 or 3 hours. And there's a good example of it the other day where Stefanos Tsitsipas, who's the defending champion, who won it last year, he played a tournament debutant, Andrei Rublev, and both players lost their first match in the group. So the loser of this match between them was out. And Rublev had match point in the final set tiebreak and double faulted. And within 60 seconds, Tsitsipas had won the match and Rublev was out. So that's how ruthless it is. So as I was saying at the start, even if you have a casual general interest in tennis, it's a very attractive proposition. And also, this is the last year it's at the O2 Arena in London after a 12-year run where Nikolai Davydenko won it in 2009 against Juan Martín del Potro. It's been an extremely popular tournament there in the last decade. I think it sells out every year, but obviously there's no fans this year. As a result, the prize money has diminished by, I think, about $1 million. I was reading in the New York Times the other day. So it's about €1.3 million for the winner this year, where it was about $2.5 million for the winner last year, Tsitsipas. And that's because there's no crowds there. So there's obviously that eerie feeling still, like there has been in every tennis tournament since the return of play. But you are seeing the best players in the world compete. And really, out of the 8 players, 7 of those players are definitely warranted. The only one is Diego Schwartzman, who's really only playing because Roger Federer hasn't played since the Australian Open last January because of COVID. And then subsequently he got knee surgery in June and he's been recovering since then. Schwartzman, the only thing of note that Schwartzman did this year was reach the Italian Open final, where he beat Rafa Nadal on clay in the semi-final, but lost to Djokovic, reached the semi-final of the French Open, but that's it. And you can see that he's kind of out of his depth so far. He's lost his first 2 matches. But the other 7 players are the 7 best players in the world. So it's brilliant to watch.
You mentioned Zverev there, and his partner's given a detailed account in a recent interview in the media about domestic abuse and violence. An ex-partner. How is tennis reacting to this? How is the game coping with headlines of this sort about one of its top players?
It's been an awkward response, really, because the ATP have they released a general statement saying, they don't tolerate any abuse of any form and all that, kind of everything you'd expect them to say. But Zverev is continuing to play. He's playing this Friday afternoon against Novak Djokovic, and the winner goes through to the semi-final. Zverev, needless to say, has completely denied all allegations against him in this interview by his ex-partner Adia Sharipova with the renowned tennis journalist Ben Rothenberg, who's previously a guest on Off the Ball, actually not too long ago. It was an interview in Racket magazine, and Sharipova went into great detail about the abuse that she claims that Zverev inflicted upon her during their relationship. And it's very difficult reading at times in terms of the examples of what she said he did to her. And some of these allegations occurred during ATP events. Even the US Open last year in 2019, Sharipova claims that she was attacked in the hotel room where all the players were staying during that tournament. So it's a very difficult situation because Zverev has obviously been asked about it in the pre-tournament press conference for these ATP finals. And there was a wide camera shot of Zverev in this Zoom conference. And he was looking down at his lap and he was reading from his phone a prepared statement, but he was kind of paraphrasing the statement. So he didn't read it verbatim, which was a strange move because you'd have thought he would have said, look, I can't say much, but I will say this prepared statement. So he was paraphrasing and he was continuously saying, obviously I'm going to continue denying that these things happened because that's not what happened. So it's very difficult. Sharipova said that her close friends at the time kind of didn't believe her that it was happening. And now they do. So where this goes next, I don't know. They're going to continue investigating it, but as we speak, Zverev is very much still playing. He very much denies all accusations made against him, but the accusations are there in print. It's there to read if you just look it up. And it's a very long article and it's a very grueling read because of some of the examples she uses.
Yeah, Racket Magazine, and we will keep an eye on events there, obviously, as they unfold, and the future for Zverev particularly, and on the court as well over the next few days. Colm, thanks a million. Colm Boohig on the line there, as always. A very passionate voice when it comes to tennis, and happy to hear from him ahead of a pretty big weekend for the sport there. So you are watching OTB AM. It's 9:15 on this Friday morning. We're live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We've plenty still to come. We're going to make our GEA predictions. Will O'Callaghan still forging ahead, it has to be said, in the lead with, I don't know, is it an unsurmountable lead? But maybe it can be done this weekend, so that's coming up a little bit later on. And by the way, a reminder that the 2020 GEA Football All-Ireland Senior Championships are well underway now. To celebrate all of that, Super Value, as part of their Support Where You're From campaign, have given us some great prizes to give away. All we need from you is to dig out your favourite ticket stub, a match programme, a jersey, or a photograph with your GEA hero, all GEA-related items that you've been dying to tell the nation about. Just make a 20-second video explaining its significance. It doesn't need to be a Scorsese production, anything very simple at all, and get those videos into us here on any of our OTB social channels, or you can hit us up on WhatsApp 0879 180 180, and we're going to choose a winner every Friday during the championship. And each weekly winner will land a €200 voucher for Super Value near you, and also the chance to star in Super Value's Superfan series, which is a fly-in-the-wall peak inside the homes of dedicated supporters around the country. And Super Value is a proud sponsors of the GEA Football Ireland Senior Championships. You can see youtube.com/Super Value Ireland for much more details on all of that. Phil Egan, welcome back.
Hey lads, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Right, a fairly manic weekend of football ahead. Your must-watch, might-watch and won't-watch list, I don't have in front of me, but tell me where you're heading on the must-watch.
Well, obviously, Premier League returns tomorrow, 12:30, Newcastle-Chelsea. So I think that is a must-watch, because obviously Chelsea are finding their form. Hakim Ziyech has been key to that. But at the 12:30 kickoff, I know it's something Frank Lampard has complained about, that they've been put on that slot. Who wants to be on the 12:30 slot after the international break? Just think back to last month, and the Merseyside derby was the first game back, and that was action-packed. So if we get that much drama in tomorrow's game between Newcastle and Chelsea, then we're in for a treat. Now, it's been strange watching the international games because there's been no VAR, so all that drama comes back into it, and ridiculous offside decisions, handball decisions, everything disputed. And Newcastle are quite a tough team for Chelsea to play against when it comes to St James's Park. Now, that was more an issue for Jose Mourinho when he was the Chelsea manager, but yeah, they make things quite difficult for you. So it could be a tricky enough one for Chelsea. We don't know if Thiago Silva will start for Chelsea. He's obviously 36, played a couple of games for Brazil, so will Frank Lampard throw him in there? The problem is, I think you're going to see some crazy results this weekend. Obviously, we know the nature of the season so far. No fans. We've had some bizarre results. But throw in an action-packed international break where some players are playing 3 games. What kind of condition are they coming back in? Obviously, some players are not available because of COVID. So it's going to be very hard to predict games until maybe you see those team sheets before kickoff.
Yeah, Phil, I won't lie to you. If that Newcastle-Chelsea game had slipped into my watch, or even maybe a little further down the list, you wouldn't have got too much argument here. But, I mean, I don't know if there's a category that we could have higher than must-watch. But Spurs versus Manchester City, for all the reasons on the touchline, is very much in that category. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Mourinho-Guardiola factor, it was something that came into the Premier League in 2016 when Guardiola took over City and Mourinho was in charge of Manchester United, and that rivalry, it didn't really amount to anything because City were just so far ahead of United. But Jose Mourinho obviously got a win over City last season at White Hart Lane, and today actually marks 1 year since Jose Mourinho took over as Tottenham manager. It was a big surprise at the time, given how popular Pochettino was and Jose Mourinho's links to Chelsea. And I think a year in, there's a lot of love for Jose Mourinho. He's managed to get Spurs fans on his side. Now, we know it's not going to end well, but at the moment, things are going quite well for him. He's got a very good squad. Some people think that they could challenge for a Premier League title this season because the likes of City and Liverpool are not going to run away with it like they have in previous seasons. So this is going to be an interesting one where we've seen the best of Spurs basically play on the counter-attack. Harry Kane finds space and finds Son, and that's where their goals come from. Højbjerg, a player that Guardiola knows from his time at Bayern Munich, has been a great addition to the Spurs squad. Give them a bit of metal in midfield, and it also has a bit of creativity as well. So this is going to be definitely the must-watch game tomorrow. Obviously, then you're looking at the Liverpool-Leicester game on Sunday. But yeah, it's interesting watching City so far. They've drawn a lot of games. They're definitely not scoring as many goals. We know that they're not creating as many chances, but they do look a lot more solid at the back. Now, obviously, Laporte is back in there. Ruben Diaz has been signed as well. But in terms of they're not being left as exposed as they have been. Now, is that going back to what happened the day against Leicester where they conceded 5? So it mightn't be as previous games have gone between Spurs and City, or Mourinho and Guardiola, where Mourinho's quite happy to sit in and Guardiola's teams will have a lot of possession. Guardiola will be very conscious of what can happen on the break given how good Spurs are.
Liverpool-Leicester has got in there. Liverpool in crisis really is how we should start to describe them. That should just be their moniker from here on. Phil, they've got COVID crisis going on. They've obviously such massive issues defensively. That's all the negative stuff is out of it. You think if they actually managed to pull through this period that they'd be with their title ambitions still very much in track, and there's no reason to suggest they can't, but to get some of those players back, and suddenly the opportunity presents itself to put some daylight, when they get all those stars back, to put some daylight between them and the rest. Yeah, again, I suppose Liverpool fans will probably be tuning in for Jurgen Klopp's pre-match press conference this afternoon, where he'll reveal who's in and who's out. We obviously know who's out. We know Van Dijk is out. We know Joe Gomez is out. But obviously Mo Salah is out as well. But is Thiago back? Is Fabinho back? Because if they start with Fabinho and Matip as a central defensive pairing against Leicester, they'll fancy their chances. Then what does he do at right back? Obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold's another player that picked up a calf injury in that game against Manchester City. He'd be close to a return, but it looks like Sunday will come too soon. So does he go with Milner as a right back? And that's obviously the player that came on in that game against City. Does he go with Nico Williams, who, he's still very young, and maybe Klopp might feel this isn't the game for him. But Klopp has shown before. I mean, he's thrown Trent Alexander-Arnold in to play a game at Old Trafford before. Wasn't the easiest afternoon for him. I seem to remember going up against Anthony Martial, but this is what makes you as a player. Obviously, Reece Williams has come into the team, Nat Phillips as well. So Klopp will definitely feel like, he's not going to moan about all the players he's missing. Now, he's obviously been quite vocal in how the international games have gone, the fact that they're trying to play 3 games, and we know how busy the schedule is. We know what it's like coming into December. So the players are being absolutely flogged at the moment, but Liverpool will still have a very strong starting 11. We should find out later on today exactly what they can do in terms of if Thiago can play, that's a massive boost. But I suppose people will think this is Leicester's chance, and Leicester, if they're going to beat Liverpool at Anfield, this is as good a chance as they get, given that Jamie Vardy's had his feet up on the international break. Well, I say he's obviously been training, but he hasn't been playing any high-intensity matches for England. And obviously Harvey Barnes is another player that hasn't been away on international duty. So they'll definitely fancy their chances. It was a very tight game at Anfield last season. If you think back to when they played on the 26th of December last season, Liverpool went to Leicester, hammered them, and the wheels kind of came off for Leicester. It's still very early days, but Leicester have been very impressive, especially at the back, and Fofana. Yeah, a couple of title contenders there, so we're keeping a keen eye on that. You've stuck Leeds Arsenal in there as well, Phil, in that must-watch. But somehow, from what I understand, you've relegated Manchester United and West Brom out of that and into the might-watch. Justify yourself? Yeah, I think what happens with a might-watch is sometimes you can start watching it and you can give it a chance. You can give it a chance, or you can go the other way where you don't start watching it, but you keep an eye on it. You might check the score and you think, oh, West Brom have scored an early goal at Old Trafford. Maybe that's going to turn into a must-watch. Or, as I said, if you start watching it and there's a couple of early goals, you think this is a game I could come back to later on. When I have a must-watch, this is, as I said, this is me sitting down uninterrupted for the whole game. We don't know what to expect from Manchester United. We know they have a wretched record at Old Trafford this season, but West Brom haven't won
a Premier League game this season. However, they do have a decent enough record at Old Trafford in recent seasons. Seem to remember them going there as a relegated team and getting a result that actually handed Manchester City the Premier League title a few years back when Mourinho was in charge. But it's a game that United should be winning, and they'd like to build a bit of momentum given what happened before the international break. They got that really important win against Everton, and then you're into the Champions League as well, and they can recover what happened against Istanbul and get themselves back into contention for qualifying, because they're still in good shape in that Champions League group when you consider how tough it was in terms of the draw. So this is one of those games where United could score early and it could be a very comfortable evening for them, but they haven't shown that so far at Old Trafford. But you kind of look at West Brom and you wonder where the goal is going to come from.
Yeah, you have Villa, Brighton and Fulham, Everton and Wolves, Southampton all in the might watch, and then nobody's going to argue too much about your won't watch. Sheffield United against West Ham and Burnley up against Crystal Palace. So that's the lineup for the weekend. Phil, good man. Thanks, William.
Thanks, lads. Enjoy
the games. Thanks, Phil Egan there as always with his must watch, might watch and won't watch of games for the weekend. You are watching OTB AM 9:25 on this Friday morning. We're live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We have plenty still to come. We're going to get into our GA predictions in, I think, right now in just a second. And find out exactly how all that's going. Will had been very much out in front over the last number of weeks. He got an early lead. He's like your man who sort of gets going in the Tour de France very early. And I think the both lads are, Owen and Will, you're there. You got to get going early on. We can get a sense there. Will, who's on his victory parade already out and about around Dublin City Centre by the looks of things. You're storming ahead in the lead, Will. You're not to be caught.
No, look, we're running out of games at this stage, Adrian. That's probably the one saving grace. I'm in Tullamore train station currently, about to catch the Galway to Dublin train in about 4 minutes' time. So for the sake of our conversation, hopefully the train is a couple of minutes late. This will be the one day it'll probably be early. But last weekend wasn't a bad one. Again, Tommy got all the spoils in terms of being the only person to predict that Clare would win that game against Wexford. So I've been stung twice by Wexford now, having backed them to beat Galway too. And this week, not to give too much of a spoiler, I'm going to totally flip my argument and go for Clare this weekend. So just kind of hoping to keep that slight lead at the top at the moment.
You have the 3-game lead at the moment. You are on 28 correct predictions, 5 incorrect predictions. I'm on 25 and 8. And down at the bottom, it is a battle between Adrian and Tommy. They've both got 24 correct calls so far and 9 incorrect ones. It was a better week, a slightly better week for Tommy last week. He got 7 to Adrian's 6 in terms of correct calls. Let's have a look at how things are going this week. We'll start with the hurling, and Clare against Waterford is one of the 2 games that we're looking at this weekend. Everybody is going for Clare in this game except for Adrian. Why have you picked Waterford?
I would say, by the way, I doubled down in Galway last week, and but for a wayward Joe Canning sideline and that Shane Walsh sideline that got sent back, I'd be nudging Will out of the way there now. But as similar sort of a logic here, right? I'm going for Waterford to beat Clare. Very straight up logic. I'm not going to lie. Waterford gave Limerick a proper run of it, obviously, last weekend. Talk of Limerick being that team of a generation, and they've run them to within 4 points. Beaten Cork. So they're building, and I think that Clare had that, let's not forget that Clare had a 1-point win over Laois not that long back. They beat a Wexford team who'd been given a thumping by Galway in the Leinster final, and I know the Tony Kelly factor, you can throw that back in my face, and it's totally legitimate caveat there, but Tommy keeps mentioning guaranteed all-star players, right, and saying that, watch out for these lads this weekend. So I'm going to say, for this Waterford-Clare game, Waterford to win, and by the way, a couple of names that you haven't heard of, so keep an eye out for them. I think they're going to score big this weekend. Stephen Bennett is one, and a fella called Austin Gleeson is the other. You heard it here first.
Tell us why Galway are going to be tipped.
Mainly based on having gone for Galway last weekend and feeling that I really need to go double or quits on them on. And I think that they all know that they should have won last weekend. I think it's going to drive them on. And I think that, I'm doubling down in Galway, and that's my logic.
Will O'Callaghan, I fully expect the train to come and interrupt this, but there are strength in numbers here. Myself, yourself and Tommy are all backing Clare, and we're all backing Tipperary. Why are we going to be right?
Well, for Tipperary, I think I wasn't impressed with them in terms of how they played against Limerick the first day on, but last week was a lot back towards what we saw from them last year. They switched the 15 around a little bit. Bonner Maher, Dan McCormick coming into the team, an improved work rate, including, I think many people probably saw the hook from Seamus Callanan. I think hopefully we get a game somewhere of the vintage of the last 5 years between these two teams. We'd love a game on par with the 2017 semi-final when Joe Canning scored the wonder point over his shoulder from the sideline. I just think this time round, Tipperary are going to take on a Galway team who've been very impressive in their first two games. Can't take away from Adrian's argument at all there. They really should be Leinster champions. But I think a chink in the armour that we saw last week was the Galway full back line and their goalkeeper. Really and truly, they should have dealt with that goal scored by Richie Hogan. We give all the credit to Hogan for juggling the ball and scoring, but that should have been cleared at least twice. Yeah. They struggled a bit when Kilkenny got direct ball into the full forward line. Tipperary still have the best full forward line in hurling, and I think they're going to get a little bit of change from this week. That's the reason I think the Tipperary are going to win. Clare, I think it's difficult for Waterford emotionally coming off the back of a final defeat last week. They hurled really well for pretty much the entire game against Limerick and pushed Limerick absolutely to their collar last weekend. But it often proves to be difficult for a team to turn around 7 days after a provincial final defeat and then win their game, in this case, a quarter-final. And Clare have been building a little bit from the last few weeks. That was a really impressive win last weekend. I know so much relies on Tony Kelly if they're going to win, but they get their captain, David McInerney, back for this weekend. They've got a good recent record against Waterford. I think Clare are going to edge it on Sunday.
It could be game over. It could be relegation for you, Adrian, before we even get into the football this weekend. But to take us to the football... Let us hear from Tommy Rooney, who is in absentia, but he left this very kind video message.
Hi lads, apologies I couldn't be with you live this Friday morning, but thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to get my quick picks across. While I may be bottom of the predictions table, I take great pride in the fact that I've made some of the best calls over the last couple of weeks. That ain't going to change this week. I'm chasing, so I've got to make a couple of big calls. So I'm going for Clare in the hurling. I've backed them all throughout this championship. I think they're going to get the job done once more against Waterford. I think, sticking with the hurling, that Tipperary are going to beat Galway. I've got the jersey on. And I think in the football, I think it's going to be a Tipperary double. I think that the Tipperary footballers are going to smash Eoin Sheahan's power rankings algorithm to pieces. Cork, somehow, are the fourth best team in the country on that list. Can't be true. Tipper 13th. They've got Michael Quinlan, they've got Conor Sweeney, they've got Colin O'Riordan, they've got enough firepower to destroy the odds and the power rankings this weekend and win the Munster final. Up in Ulster, I've backed against Cavan time and time again this year, so am I possibly going to make the same mistake again? I'm backing Donegal. That may be no surprise to any of you. And then in the football, which may be a surprising decision considering all the talk I've done this year, I am sticking with Meath. I can't back out of it now. I've spent 18 months trying to convince you of the progression that they've made. I genuinely think that last year's Leinster final was a freak. I think we're going to get a couple of goals this year. We're going to get them early. We're going to turn the Dubs over like we did in the league, and we're going to make the most of it. We're going to take our chances, and we're going to win the Leinster final for the first time since 2010, I think. Yeah, can't remember. Anyways, the Dubs are being beaten this weekend. Best of luck.
Tommy Rooney, it has to be said on, is Donald Trump. He's coming on here telling us that he's made some of the best calls over the last number of weeks. Yet he is, alongside myself, admittedly, bottom of the leaderboard. This is Trumpism in its extreme, I suggest.
Before we lose you on your very, very good train Wi-Fi, no doubt, Will, why is Tommy making the most ridiculous prediction of all time here in Meath potentially winning this Leinster final?
Pure pride, Eoin. At this stage, he's hoping that his own county can do him a massive favour. Look, Meath have scored, 12 goals in the two games on the run to the provincial final. And at times last week, Laois should have probably had a goal early on from Evan O'Carroll. Didn't take their chances, played well for the first 20 minutes or so. And then after that, the Dublin juggernaut just kicked in. You could argue that Dublin might be a little bit undercooked coming into the final, given that they breezed past Westmeath and Laois in the two games that they've played so far, winning both games by double digits. But it's very difficult to see, as Anthony Moyles was saying yesterday, a combination of bravery and also kind of doggedness from Meath to be able to get over Dublin. We haven't seen Meath get to that level yet. They've had a pretty okay run to the final, but unless they score a ton of goals tomorrow night at Croke Park, I can't see them absolutely hedging with his heart on this one.
Well, gentlemen, thanks a million. Just as the connection is dropping there, we get your final predictions there. You'll have seen them on screen anyway. Will O'Callaghan going for a Dublin win, as are myself and Adrian. He's also going for a Donegal win, which we all are. And he's going for a Cork win, which myself and Adrian are. Are you concerned, though, Adrian, about Tip and about Tommy potentially catching you with that Tipperary prediction?
Tommy's stuff is such crazy, like, talk. I made some of the best predictions over the last number of weeks, he says, right? And then, like, predicts Meath to beat Dublin. And you know, the most worrying thing about Eoin is that he probably believes that there's a chance that they will. Like, I mean, I don't think any right-thinking person is of that view at all. But am I worried about the tip thing? Do you know what? I made the prediction earlier in the week. I was very confident about it, but having listened to Louise Galvin a bit earlier on today, and the few little grains of rice on that we like to speak about in this show, I think there are suddenly a bunch of reasons that tip might get it done. What do you think?
Well, I said it a couple of weeks ago. I said that there's something telling me that it won't be a Mayo versus Cork All-Ireland semi-final. Now, I did predict Mayo to win last week, and I'm predicting Cork to win this week, so I'm a complete and utter hypocrite. That's the first thing you can take away from that. There is just something maybe about the Cork win a couple of weeks ago where it just sort of feels like that there is a banana skin coming. What I will say is that Cork are very fortunate that it wasn't a 1 week turnaround. I think coming off that Kerry win, the unbelievable exertion that would have taken out of the team in a 1 week turnaround would have been very, very tough. And also the energy that it would have taken mentally to actually get back up for a game for a Munster final the following week would have been a very big challenge for them. But they've had 2 weeks, and I think that could be the key in the end. I don't think it's going to be a blowout whatsoever. The game in 2016 was a classic. It was an absolutely brilliant game. Nobody remembers it because it was Tip versus Cork in a Munster semi-final, I think it was, and it seems to have gone under the radar at that point of the year. But let's not forget that after Tip got over the line in that particular game, they did end up going all the way to the All-Ireland semi-final. So this wasn't a fluke. This is a Tip team that had been building, and it seemed had been dismantled. But for 1 year only, you've got these Tip pieces back together, and it just so happens to be the centenary of Bloody Sunday. It just so happens that there is no backdoor. There won't be way for Cork to come back around or Kerry to come back around and beat them eventually. There are just a few of these stars aligning for Tipperary this year. 1935, the last time they've beaten won a Munster championship. And so I just feel that there's going to be a bit of history this year. But that sometimes I feel is nonsense talk. And if you look at it empirically, Cork still have the better players. And sometimes football matches just come down to the better players, and that could be it. So I'm sticking with Cork, but just about Adrian. I think Louise did make a very convincing case earlier in the show as well. So just to recap those predictions, the edgy predictions this week's probably the quicker way to do it. Tommy is picking Tip to beat Cork. Tommy is picking Meath to beat Dublin. Adrian is picking Waterford to beat Clare, and Adrian is picking Galway to beat Tip. So there you have it. Everybody's picking
those two the two hurling predictions that I've made that's gone against both of you, or all of you. You'd have to accept that there's a possibility that they happen, right? Like in a way that Dublin are going to thump Meath, and like I know we could all look like fools on Monday morning in relation to Tipperary, and that's the one that I'd slightly be 50-50 on, but there's every chance that those two come off for me, and suddenly that table is a very different look about it come Monday.
For sure. But best of luck with it all.
Yeah, we're going to need all that. A couple of comments in. Tipperary are a good football side, so they might something, I presume, win. And the centenary jersey will motivate them, says Kevin Cronin on YouTube. And James Carew says, Will live on the train, a hero. You'll love to see it. You definitely do. And Cavan Lad on YouTube says, the pressure's on Donegal to turn up and play well enough to beat us. He says, yarring his way into an Ulster football final there. So that's pretty much it from us. For the minute at least anyway. We still have some good stuff to come right here on OTB AM, and do keep an ear out and an eye out on OTB Sports across the course of the morning and the day as well. We've lots of good stuff coming your way. Friday Night Racing will be along at 3 o'clock, the Paddy Power half hour as well. We're going to have OTB Gold with Nigel Mansell at 1. Friday Night Racing, as I mentioned, at 3. At 4, then the Team 33 legend Eoin Heary, former Shells and League of Ireland legend, the subject of the lads' chat at 4. And then OTB Gold is an Irish football special from 6 o'clock this evening as well. And as I mentioned, the Paddy Power half hour in there as well, for good measure to mark a card ahead of the weekend's full Premier League programme. So we're back to the normality of the Premier League after that, let's call it an international break. Doesn't fully feel like an appropriate phrase, but there we go. That is pretty much it on that front for the minute. And as I said, do keep an eye on OTB Sports Radio over the course of today. And if you've got don't have the app, head along to your app provider and just punch in OTB Sports and download the good stuff straight to your phone. OTB AM, of course, live weekday mornings from 7:30. Stay tuned every weekday morning. You can subscribe to the podcast. It goes up live after the show finishes and up every morning as well. And so there's plenty of good stuff up there. But that's it from us for the minute on this Friday morning. You can stay tuned though to check out a great chat here. Johnny Giles talking to Nathan last night on the football show about dementia and football, amongst other things.
All right, welcome back. It's Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you. 53106 is a text number. If you have any questions for John Giles, who is live with us on the line. Evening, John.
Evening, Nathan.
Tough all week of international football.
Yeah, certainly tough. Tough, Nathan, yeah. Not very good for us, unfortunately.
No. Listen, Stephen Kenny's, 3 months in now, 8 matches, no victories, no goals in the last 7 games. The stats obviously aren't good, but there's been a whole lot going on outside of it. Do you feel you can read much into what Stephen Kenny has done so far?
Not really, Nathan, because I think he was 14 players short, wasn't he, for the last match there. The way things are, actually, I don't think his matches should be played, Nathan, to be quite honest.
Right.
And I think there's too many matches for the football, for the players anyway. But certainly from Stephen's point of view, it hasn't been a good start. But you'd have to say it hasn't been a fair start either. He's lost a lot of players, and it's very hard to get any sort of rhythm in it. But I'd have to say the matches that were played, ultimately, I was disappointed in them. I couldn't see much in any of the matches for us, and the 3 matches that we played.
Is that both in terms of style and in terms of actual individual performances?
Well, it was just that we weren't really in the matches, Nathan. Like the England match, we were well outplayed. Wales, we were okay. We didn't look like winning it. Didn't really look like winning it against Bulgaria either. So I know there was a lot of misses, players missing, and a lot of upsets, which is not good. But overall, I'd say I was disappointed in the 3 matches.
Would you have any concerns that there's going to be a real knock-on effect of these results when they get back together for the World Cup qualifiers in March, that having gone on such a difficult run of results, that the squad may be just shot in terms of confidence, that when they get back together, the buzz that you would expect of a new manager is going to be long gone?
Well, I'd say that would probably be gone. But when it comes to how long have we got now? A couple of months?
3-4 months.
Yeah, that if he gets the players in that he wants, and we don't play as many matches as we did, then it'll be a new start again. And Stephen, 8 matches we've played now?
Yeah.
Will have learned, I think, anyway, and the players will have learned a lot from those particular matches. So I would expect a better start, certainly than we had at Stephen's first matches, because he will have had the 8 matches behind him. He can look at the videos, he can look at all sorts of things to finally decide what's his best 11, and that's a biggie when you're starting off as an international team manager, or any manager for that matter. So at least he'll know that. I think looking over the videos of all the matches that we played, then starting the next March, he should definitely know his best team. And that's a start, Nathan. And he has had an awful lot of bad luck. I mean, the players having to pull out, the travelling and the virus situation, it couldn't have been worse, really, for the new manager coming in.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's interesting. You think then that actually he should, even though he's had to chop and change consistently, should still have a good idea of what his best 11 is after this run of games? Yes.
I think he should definitely know now, having had the matches that we've had. Now, I think I said from the start, it takes about 8 matches, Nathan. So I think looking over the videos of all the matches that we've played, he'd have all those, I would imagine, and go over them, have a look at them again and again and again, and to say, well, yeah, that's definitely my best team.
Is there anyone over the last couple of games, the competitive games as they're meant to be against Bulgaria and Wales and the friendly against England, that have stood out in any way?
Well, I thought one of our best players was Horgan.
Right, yeah.
I thought Horgan did really well, and I was surprised that he was taken off in two of the matches anyway. But he was able to do his stuff. He was able to go past players. He was the only one creating anything really from the wide positions. And I thought he was very good. I think of the players that we've seen, from my position anyway, I'd have him in the team.
Yeah.
I thought he was a plus.
What about in the middle of midfield? He's ended up using a huge amount of players across the 8 games in the middle of midfield and getting James McCarthy back in the fold at the very start. He's had some personal issues, so hasn't been involved. Conor Howard's played a lot of football. We saw Jason Knight and Jason Malumbi come through. Has he discovered anything in midfield that can maybe change the way that Ireland approach games in that part of the pitch?
I don't think so, Nathan. I think we're pretty much of a muchness. I think I'd have Brady in the team as the best of the midfield players. But after that, and I think I said to you before on the programme, I would only play 2 players in the middle of the field, Nathan, with the 2 lads. I'd definitely have Horgan wide one side and McLean wide on the other side, and then make the job easier for the midfield players than it is at the moment. In other words, when they get it, there's somebody to give it to, and let them get on with the job from there. I tell you, what I mentioned we mentioned before, Nathan, about Notts Forest.
Yeah.
Maybe not. When Notts Forest were at their best, like they 2 midfield players, they were average players, but they had John Robertson, who's a good, really top-class player, and Martin O'Neill, and their job was to get it, give it out to them, and let them get on with it, get the fullbacks on the overlap and things like that. And that's our best way, because I can't see us cutting up teams from the players that we have in the middle of the field. I think we'd have to get it, out to the wingers, keep them wide, and not so in wingers. When you've got wingers like that, when the ball's in the other side of the field, they can pop inside and make up another 3 in the middle of the field, Nathan.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to get too technical, but that's the way I would see it.
A lot of the talk again is about Jack Byrne. He didn't get much game time last night. I think it was 10 minutes or so at the end when Robbie Brady was forced off. And whether Jack Byrne maybe is that technical player in midfield who can create something. Do you see him being at the level where he could do that?
What I've seen of him, Nathan. Yeah, what I've seen of him, I like him.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen enough. We played 3 matches, but as you say, he only played 10 minutes in that. I think he looks like a creative player, but I'd just like to see him in one of those matches, for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It looks to me, I've seen him before play, and he looks good. I think I'd love to see him in the position for a couple of matches.
And see what he can do. One of the things that Stephen Kenny probably would have been quite confident of when he took the job was defensively that Ireland would be so strong. Again, so hampered by injuries that last night he doesn't have Coleman, Doherty, Egan, Stevens. But Shane Duffy has been there. Duffy, it seems, is going through something of a crisis of confidence, certainly struggling up at Celtic, has struggled in these games as well with Ireland. When you have a player like that who's probably having the biggest dip in terms of form of his career, but he has the experience that Duffy has, do you just have to let him play through it and hope and presume he is going to come through it?
Yeah, I think he had 1 or 2 mishaps in the matches, but I don't think he was that bad, Nathan. The fact that he's playing with Celtic and not playing well, obviously, it doesn't do people watching him any favours, because you're looking for him to make mistakes. I think he made 1 or 2 mistakes, but overall, but again, he didn't have those players around him, as you say. Coleman didn't play. There was a couple of players that were out that could have helped him along the way. I don't think he was. Let's put it this way: I was picking the Irish team tomorrow. I'd have him in the team. That's for sure.
Yeah, you don't think his place is under threat at all?
No, I don't think so. He's like most players. He's not playing as well as he can, and obviously we know that he's having a rough time at Celtic. So when they come into a match, you're looking for him not to be playing well. So the slightest mistake is exaggerated. But I would stick with him.
Yeah.
But when you miss Coleman and players like that who have been the best part, as you said beforehand, Nathan, there's no doubt that the back 5 under Mick McCarthy and now are the best part of the team. But they weren't all playing in these matches. There was at least 2 missing for most of those any one of those particular games.
Yeah. A lot of players missing. Yeah,
a lot of players. Yeah,
they're hard games to analyse.
It's been hard for Stephen in that way, Nathan. I think he's 14 players missing or something.
Yeah. In relation to the match, and the matches are coming on top of each other as well. Yeah.
But he will have learned. There's no doubt. I mean, the more matches you play, the more you're going to learn. So, despite the fact that we didn't win them or didn't play particularly well in them, at least he will know and he will have seen the players that he has at his disposal.
Yeah. So we'll push it all back to March and make some judgments then, I guess.
Yes.
All right.
Well, there's nothing we can do in the meantime anyway,
no.
Nathan. You know, I mean, obviously, I'd love to look back on the 3 matches we played and say, yeah, that was really good, that was really good, that was really good. But I'd have to say there wasn't that much good came out of the matches. That's for sure. Except experience for
players,
Stephen.
Yeah. John, I wanted to talk to you about the story at the moment around dementia and Alzheimer's in former players that is really gaining a lot of attention. Just today, the PFA said it's setting up a new task force to further examine the issue of brain injury disease in football. It follows some earlier research that suggests that former footballers were between 2 and 5 times more likely to die from degenerative brain diseases. This is obviously a conversation you're very familiar with. Nobby Stiles' son, John Stiles, who'd be your nephew, was talking about this week in the English media, saying, and being critical, I think, of the PFA in particular, after Nobby sadly passed away last month of dementia, and saying, how can it be that these players are left to struggle when the Premier League receives £3 billion a year? These older players have largely been forgotten, and many are in ill health. I hope Dad's death is the catalyst for this scandal to be addressed. The PFA said are evaluating ways to improve the services and care provided. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, there are two different subjects, Nathan. A lot of players have passed away from Alzheimer's, and their attachment to head and the ball. And the story so far seems to be that there's some. It's definitely a case that there is some connection between head and the ball and Alzheimer's because of the players that have done it. There's going to be more research in that, and I think what John was explaining in his statement was that it's popular to be talking about that, and quite rightly so, for the future, the head and the ball in future. But what he was trying to bring attention to, that particularly the Professional Footballers Association, PFA, was that despite the fact of how the players get dementia, really that the Professional Footballers Association should be doing more for the players than they're doing. Do you know what I mean, Nathan? It's like the conversation has been a bit of a camouflage to what the PFA are not acting upon as they should. In other words, it doesn't matter, as far as the professional footballers are concerned, and you're going to help the players, it doesn't matter how they got dementia, you just got to help them. So what all the talk about is that, what are we going to do about the heading? Well, quite rightly, there should be a lot of talk about it. But what's being missed is the fact that despite all the talk about this, that the players, from the old players particularly, it's been overlooked in many ways that they're not being helped in the way that they should. In other words, there's a lot of players from my generation particularly, from the new generation where a lot of money, but from my generation where no players of my generation, Nathan, and after, finish football financially secure.
Yeah.
So the Professional Footballers Association are not proactive in this when these players run into hard times. And it's been overtaken by the talk about heading the ball. My take on it is that regardless of how they get it, then they should be looked after. And that hasn't been the case. Because if you take, but there's a lot of professional footballers, again from my generation, are in bad times, not through Alzheimer's or heading the ball. Actually, they have heart attacks and cancer and bad hips and bad knees and all the various things that all professional footballers have. And they definitely haven't been looked after as well as they should have been. And that's what John was trying to bring attention to that. Of course, we've got to concentrate on Alzheimer's and see what can be done, whether it be heading the ball, whether we have protection, whether we have headgear or invent headgear, Nathan. In my opinion, that hasn't been mentioned yet. That could help that. Stop the young players. Most heading from footballers with professional footballers was in training, Nathan.
Yeah, I saw Jeff Hurst saying that as well, that actually within a game it might be a few headers per game for the vast majority of players, but obviously in training it's something you actually try and learn the skill with, so it's constant every day.
Yes. No, so they could stop that or reduce that. I'm only talking now off the top of my head and how things can be improved. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for this improvement and knowledge of the Alzheimer's, let's look after the players who need looking after, who don't have Alzheimer's, or who do have Alzheimer's. I know from experience with the players, a lot of the players that died recently haven't been very well looked after, Nathan. And I know that for a fact.
And we're not talking about players who were playing in the lower leagues. We're talking about World Cup winners. You're talking about Nobby Stiles. You've spoken before about Bobby Moore. You're talking about the best of the best.
Yes. Well, if they're not going to be looked after, the lads who are less famous and played in the 3rd and 4th division in that, Nathan, right? There's loads of them. But the professional footballer is for every footballer. It's not for the stars exclusively. It's for all professional footballers who belong to the players' union. That's what it's for. And they should be proactive and look for these players who need help. Because from what we know, there's 40 to 50 million pounds in the players' union.
Yeah, they're a very wealthy organisation.
Yeah, it's got a lot of money.
And John, through the years, have you ever had conversations through the years with the PFA? Have they ever reached out to see how you're getting along? If you need assistance in any way, have they ever reached out to any of your former teammates?
No.
Nothing?
No. My only experience with them, Nathan, was years ago when I was getting my hip done. I happened to have a hip done. And I was privately insured. But I tried, I rang the association, the Professional Footballers Association, and I spoke to a famous ex-player. And it wasn't good.
Okay.
It was like a means test.
Right.
It was like a means test. And actually what was said was that it was £12,000 for the I was covered private insurance, but I was trying it out. And the first thing was, the most we can give you is 3,000 towards that.
Yeah.
And could you not go back to your old clubs?
Right. So they were
I was 45 years out of Manchester United.
Yeah.
And I would have had to send in the bank statements and that. So it wasn't made easy by any means. So I had personal experience of that, right? And they're not proactive in that way, and that's why the heading of the ball has taken over all the. But there's lots of other players from my generation and after, Nathan, that I'm sure need help or have needed help. Now, what will Graham Taylor will say was, or Gordon Taylor, I should say, would say, well, we have helped, and you would have quite a few players coming back say the PFA did help us.
Okay.
Yeah, but from what I can gather of the figures, and I'm not sure about that, I have to put him out, that Gordon Taylor's salary over the years, right, is and the money given to all the players, all the money given to players, the players benefits from that is 10% or 15% of Taylor's wages.
Yeah. Yeah, he's on a big salary. There's no question about that. We'll check out the exact figures as to what it is. Do they have a point when they're saying go back to the club? Because you played for Manchester United, you played for Leeds United. We're talking about two huge, wealthy organisations. That there should be a bit more of an onus on clubs to make sure as players leave. Like, it's not going to be as big an issue as time goes on because the money involved now, but that they would have some sort of ownership of the players who represented the club.
I think you're right, Nathan, but you've no chance of getting it.
Right.
No chance of getting it. What the clubs would say, you know, the clubs never gave much away. The clubs were always mean to players in my time, me myself included. But what they'd say to you was, well, we paid your wages at that time.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be much give in it. Now, I wouldn't say that of all clubs, because I know that Peter Lorimer, for example, is not well, and they helped him last year. But generally speaking, Nathan, once you play for the club, you played for the club and you're gone. So that's what the Professional Footballers Association is there for.
Yeah.
They belong to the players, you know.
Yeah, well, you'd like to see the current players maybe come out and make a stand, but they haven't done it so far, so I don't know if they'll do it at this stage.
No, well, they could. They, you know, the young players, good luck to, they're getting plenty of money now. I have no problem with that. Yeah. Most of the old players have no problem with that, Nathan. Yeah. That's no big deal. Good luck to them. Because I, along with a lot of other players, when I was only 21 in 1961, I was the players' union man in Leeds. I believed in the union, really believed in the union, and I was part of hundreds of players who were prepared to go on strike in 1961 for the players' rights and to get rid of the maximum wage and that, which we did.
Yeah,
which was and the freedom of contract later on. that set the way for the players of today.
Yeah,
and good luck to them. You know, I've no problem. I've no problem with that. I don't envy the lads earning the money they're earning today.
We got to leave it there, John. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We're just heading to news. We'll come back to this over the next couple of weeks, though, because I think it's definitely something worth exploring more.
Okay, Nathan.
Thanks a lot, John. We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Nathan. Thanks. Bye.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.